Okay, let me open up the hearing of the Harwich Conservation Commission for November 20th, 2019. We are being videotaped tonight, and I hope all the folks have had a chance to sign in. The first item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 14 Sequotum Road, proposal for a new dwelling.
Yes, good evening. Matt Farrell, and with me is Bill Gibson.
Good evening.
So you folks should have a revised plan in front of you, dated at the top of the title block. It should be dated 11/11/2019. We reduced the patio width to about 8 feet wide, and we're holding over 61 feet to the wetland. We extended the patio the length of the dwelling. We adjusted the area table. We also added a retaining wall in the front of the property, but that's just outside the 100-foot buffer zone. So if you look at the area table, we're about 823 square feet over the required 2-to-1 mitigation requirements. And at that, it'll open up to questions from the commission.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Nikki, do you have anything new to offer us for the summary?
It just looks, like you mentioned, it's 61 feet, just over 61 feet from the resource area. Mitigations consist of removing all of the tree of heaven and other invasive honeysuckle and replanting with native shrubs. They are required to do 1,800 square feet of mitigation, and they're doing well over that. They're doing 2,647 square feet. So really, it's just if you approve the final site plan and are happy with their version of mitigation.
Yeah, all right, thanks. Well, let's see if we have any questions around the table. Do you want to start, John?
I don't have any questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
I have no questions. I think all the concerns are covered.
Okay. Stan?
No comments.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I like it.
All right.
I think you addressed all the questions we had at the last meeting, so.
Good.
Very good.
So Amy did draft up an order of conditions in case you guys wanted to vote on that tonight. It's a pretty standard one. If you want to, Brad, I don't know if you, I think it should be in the Dropbox, but I have a copy, Brad, if you want to
Yeah,
read it, or if you just want to wait till the next meeting like we typically do.
Right. I think we'd probably vote on the project and then, review those, unless there was an issue where you guys really needed to get something
There's a timing
quickly.
issue, is there?
Yeah.
Well, not an
Yeah,
issue.
so they'll be
That's.
at the December 4th meeting then, and then I'll mail it out a few days after that.
Okay.
I do have a question on the top of the slope. There was a comment from Amy on having a row of native shrubs on there. Is that shown in the plan? Was that accommodated?
It is not.
Okay.
We have the mitigation on the left side of the property as you're facing it from the road, and the right
Right.
side of the property. I think the idea was to keep the view to the pond as open as possible.
Right. How about the density of the native shrubs that are being planted? It's a concern we've had in the past where, mitigating by removing invasive alone is not often what we're trying to achieve. We're looking to have space that becomes naturalized, becomes diverse habitat. Do you expect the density of the shrubs you're proposing to plant would allow that type of habitat to develop?
I do, and there's also some natives in there, and we're proposed to leave any native,
Keep them?
keep any native, and then, so it is possible that, especially on the left-hand side of the property, it could be a bit overcrowded.
Right.
So I didn't want to spec too many shrubs. I think it'll fill in nicely.
Okay.
As, to maturity.
Any thoughts from commission members about the potential for that area to be encroached upon over time, or do you think it'll settle in nicely?
Is that your understanding that basically it'll be left to naturalize those areas?
Yeah, we're not planning on doing anything. It's always been that way, and we're not really going to change much.
Okay. All right. Any comments from the audience? All right, seeing none, any further comments here, or would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the notice of intent for 14 Sequotum Road.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have a notice of intent for 6 and 10 Neil Road, proposal for shoreline protection.
Good evening, everyone. David Requena, contractor for James Judge and Mary Judge.
Charlie Agro from Coastal Engineering Company. Would you like to start or should I?
Let's see what they want.
Yeah, just give us a review on the revisions to the plans that you made.
I'll let Charlie do that.
Sure, and I also want to add that we received a letter from Natural Heritage a day or so ago, and they requested the slope be no greater than a 10-to-1 slope, and the last revised plan showed a 6-to-1 slope. So I prepared another set of plans here where we regrade the beach to be a 10-to-1 slope seaward of the proposed dune fence and a 3-to-1 slope on the landward side of the dune fence. And I've got a copy of that plan here, or I've actually got a few copies if I can pass that around to you all.
Nikki, did that letter from Natural Heritage make its way into our packet?
Yes.
It did? Okay. Can someone share that copy with me so I can scan it real quick?
It did have conditions. Usually I don't believe there's anymore at this time, and so there's some conditions in there for that, at this point.
Is that on a Dropbox, Nikki?
It should be, I believe Amy added it.
And other than that revision, we also reduced the scope of the project. I heard at the last meeting there were some concerns with nourishment below mean high water without the eelgrass survey. And we would also like to state that come next summer, when eelgrass is in season around July or August, we plan to do an eelgrass survey. And if the area offshore is found not to be, if there's no eelgrass found to be offshore, we plan to come back with a proposal to place nourishment below the mean high water line. Because as you can see in the section A to A profile, the beach is already on a 10-to-1 slope. And sticking with a 10-to-1 slope and only nourishing down to the mean high water line, there really isn't a whole lot of room to place the nourishment. And then we removed the groin reconstruction from the plans as well. Again, because there was a lack of an eelgrass survey, and we do plan to come back for a reconstruction of the 2 groins in the middle of the plan here at some point after the eelgrass survey is completed. And I guess other than that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions on the plan.
Just one quick follow-up there. In the past, we've rarely approved, nourishment below mean high water, and not just based on eelgrass surveys. That's an important step to look at. There's other aquatic resources that we've been concerned about, so just to let you know.
And would that be shellfish? We could look into shellfish as well.
Shellfish habitat, subtitle, diverse cobble, gravel. There's just a lot of aquatic life in that near shore subtidal habitat. So we haven't allowed it more than once or twice, and it's been very specific in certain areas. So
Okay.
You're welcome to come back with that, but we'd be looking at more than just the eelgrass survey.
Okay, understood.
Okay, thank you. Any comments for us, Nikki?
Just that they are doing standard fence, which should have the 50% spacing. I think that was an NHESP condition as well. And the nourishment and removing the steps and adding the wooden walkway. Amy's only suggestion was that when you nourish, that you plant it and, try and get it to stay there.
Sure. And I think we could do that in the area where we showed a 3-to-1 slope, except for where the footpath would go, but.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Any comments, starting with you, John?
Well, questions. I'm just trying to understand this latest wrinkle here. And your solution to it, the 10-to-1 from NEHSP, and you're saying behind the drift fence, you're making it 3-to-1?
So if you look at the section A to A, you'll see that on the seaward side of the drift fence, it's a 10-to-1 slope, because we'll consider that nourishment of the beach. And on the landward side of that drift fence, we show a slope of 3-to-1, and that will consider dune nourishment.
Okay, so they don't appear to be making that distinction, however, in their letter. So I guess it's questionable to me whether that's compliant with what they're requesting. They just say 10-to-1, that it shall not be steeper than 10-to-1. And then they say you can have native plantings on the landward side of the drift fence, but not on the seaward side. So how is, I guess the issue was that before this, I don't know what, on the original plan, what was the slope?
So the original slope was a 10-to-1 slope, but since nourishment could be placed below the mean high water line, we're able to work from the scarp line of the dune and take from the crest of the scarp line of the dune, draw a 10-to-1 slope out below the mean high water line, and just basically just take the grade of the beach, because the natural grade of the beach is about a 10-to-1 slope, maybe a 12-to-1 slope or so. And we just basically took that and rose it up and proposed it out into the water. And right now, if we work from the mean high water line, we basically drew a line from the mean high water line on a 10-to-1 slope in the landward direction, and then show a dune or a berm of a 3-to-1 slope up in the area of where the current escarpment is.
Why do you need to do that rather than just continue the 10-to-1 slope from mean high water?
So from a practicality standpoint, if we were to just continue that 10-to-1 slope up to the stairs, if you continue that line, you're looking at maybe 50 cubic yards of nourishment across the whole beach. And right now it's an eroding beach with an eroding dune. And to try to keep the dune where, the line of the dune where it is now, and to provide some protection to the area, we considered, placing a little bit more sand in the area just seaward of the dune. Should provide more sediment for the area and a little bit more of a buffer. And we've seen in some of these storms earlier this fall, this big southwestern windstorm that we got early in October did a number to a lot of the beaches out here, and placing more sand in this area gives a little bit more of a buffer and protection to the uplying area.
So then, how is what you're proposing compliant with the letter from?
So I don't necessarily know much about piping plovers, but I know that NHESP in those letters, they say that a 10-to-1 slope is beneficial to piping plover habitat. And from my understanding, the piping plovers migrate between the dune line and the water line. So having that 10-to-1 slope between what you can call, quote unquote, the dune line, especially if that area is planted after nourishment, they'd be going back and forth between that area and the mean high water line.
That doesn't answer my question.
So what, I'm sorry, just what's your question again?
How is this plan compliant with the letter?
Do you mind reading that point in the letter again?
Beach and dune nourishment, sand nourishment, 2,500 cubic yards, shall be placed at a slope not steeper than 10-to-1, as depicted on the site plan. Native plantings may occur landward of the sand drift fence. Vegetation shall not occur within the remaining nourishment area. You're hewing to the 10-to-1 for part of it and going to the 3-to-1 for the rest of it. And I'm just asking, how is that compliant with this requirement? They don't make any they don't distinguish between what's in front of and behind the drift fence. They just say 10-to-1. You're saying you're doing something different.
Yeah, I understand that. I think we're just trying to meet that standard as much as practical and still be placing nourishment on their beach. And the other option would be to take a 10-to-1 slope from the dune out to the mean high water line and then let it drop off at the mean high water line, which in a practical standpoint, as storms come up and down, the storms are going to erode that sand and replace it naturally along the beach anyway, which we can do that as well.
It's a good question, John, but I think from a practical standpoint, you need to put the sand at that location.
I get that point. I'm just concerned about, I don't know how binding these requirements from NEHSP are, and
That's a good question. It's not like it's a permit, it's a comment letter. Any insight on that, Nikki?
Is the 3-to-1 behind the sand drift fence, and then in front it's...
The 3-to-1 is behind the drift fence.
I don't think, I can email Amy, I think it was Amy that sent it.
You know, I think she might have even sent an email since we've updated the plan.
She did send an email about having received a revised plan.
I can look at it on my phone.
I think it was the same conditions.
I believe it was too. I
I
can.
can't remember exactly what the body of the email said, but I think if it's behind the sand drift fence, it will be fine to be 3 to 1, and then in front would be the 10 to 1, because that's more where the plovers are gonna hang out anyway.
That's not in this letter.
What's not?
And the letter from,
The letter that we've got in our packet.
Yeah, that's mine.
11.
And the paragraph ahead of what you were reading, Wetlands Protection Act and Massachusetts Endangered Species, it's the opinion of the division that a portion of this project as currently proposed must be conditioned in order to avoid adverse effects to the resource area habitats of state-listed wildlife, and must be conditioned in order to avoid a prohibitive take of state-listed species. The following conditions must be met, and that's when it goes into
Right,
the
but I
sand
think,
drift.
with the sand drift fence separating the 2 different slopes, they're not gonna be nesting by the fence anyway. I mean, I'll definitely email her and check and see what she thinks about that.
And Nikki, if we could work with you and work with Amy to figure out if this is the ideal approach to deal with that 10 to 1 slope, or if the ideal approach would be to have a 10 to 1 slope from the dune crest out to the water and then kind of drop it off and let Mother Nature take the sand from there. And we just, just want to know what the best approach would be to meet that standard, which, like I said, it'd be impossible to nourish the beach on a 10 to 1 slope above mean high water. There wouldn't be there's no room to do it.
yeah, I tend to agree with the comment that putting an artificial barrier in there, it doesn't automatically give you the right to change what NHSP suggests for the slope on this area. Suddenly going from 10 to 1, which they've stated is their recommendation, put an artificial barrier in, oh, now we can go to 3 to 1. It doesn't make sense to
Well,
me.
it's gonna have to transition at some point. Okay, so as it is right now, you have 2 grades, and you have 2 elevations. You have a high elevation and you have a low elevation. That exists. Okay, so it's either you have a 90-degree face on that dune, or you have a 3 to 1 slope. That's really the only thing in question here.
Unless you move the slope back, I mean, the fence back.
No, yeah,
Closer to the
assuming
dune.
a fence.
What does that gain?
I
What does
don't
that
know,
fix?
But I'm just saying, they don't take account this artificial barrier in their letter. I mean, they
Well, you know what? NHESP hasn't seen this latest plan, and I actually caught it yesterday when I was asked to be at this hearing today, that our plan showed a 6 to 1 slope after we revised it. And I brought it up to the project manager, Don Monroe, and he said, okay, let's revise it to a 10 on 1 slope. And that's how he came up with what is shown on section AA. This hasn't been sent to Natural Heritage. I reviewed the email that I got from Amy today. It was reflective of the previous revision from the 12th of November. So they haven't seen this plan. So I guess once they have a chance to see this plan, we can hear what their take is on it.
Okay, I just have a follow-up on that, which is the way the current plan is now, the drift fence is only maybe half the beach or a little more. So what happens on the western end where there is no drift fence?
We had a western drift fence. It was removed.
Well, I know,
At the
but I'm just
request of the
asking,
board, right.
you're saying that it's 3 to 1 behind the drift fence, but half the beach doesn't have the drift fence there anymore. So how does the plan work there?
Well, I mean, that entire western area is not being impacted visually as much as the other areas.
Are you nourishing that end? Putting sand there?
That's the plan now.
So that's half the 2,500 cubic yards, right?
Well, now the nourishment quantity was reduced to 1,000 cubic yards, given the current redesign of the profile.
Yeah, which actually isn't a lot.
Over this stretch.
Over that stretch, it's really not a lot. 1,000 yards of material is.
Okay, so I'm just trying to clarify.
Right.
I'm not trying to challenge what you're
Sure.
doing.
No, I
I'm
understand.
trying to understand
Yeah.
what you're proposing in your plan, because you're saying 3 to 1 behind the drift fence, but that's only half the beach.
So we're showing a flat berm from the current scarp of the dune about 5 to 10 feet long, and then from that point, doing a 3-to-1 slope down to the beach. If you look on the side of the beach that you're talking about, that we're basically taking if you look at the contours, where the 7 to 5 foot contours are, we're basically moving that seaward by 10 feet. And that's probably where it was located, 3 to 4 years ago anyway. And we're just taking that and basically moving that dune line further seaward to, again, buy some time before I have to do it again.
But doesn't that make the slope steeper?
No, the slope, I mean, if you go further seaward, if you look at the 7 to 5 foot contours there, I mean, the slope is probably a 1-on-2, if not a scarp in some
The
areas.
solid line, those are the contours you're referring to?
I'm referring to the dashed lines, not the proposed lines.
Oh, I see. You're just saying that
I'm saying the current
the
slope and,
proposed is moving to the existing is moving to where the proposed is showing here.
in a way, we're basically just trying to we're basically trying to reestablish the dune line further offshore by about, anywhere from 15 to 5 feet, given what's out there now, which again was probably 2 to 3 years ago, maybe less. It was out there.
Okay, but it's not getting any clearer for me what you're proposing here. That, you're saying that's your general objective, is to move the dune line further seaward. I get that. What I'm asking you is, you have a revised plan here, where in the revised plan, you're saying it's 10-to-1 seaward of the drift fence and 3-to-1 landward of the drift fence. Okay, but that can only apply to half the beach, because the other half of the beach, there is no drift fence. So what is the proposed contour in the latest update of the beach west of the drift fence?
It's to fill in.
As shown on the.
It's as shown here on this section, just no drift fence and no set of stairs. It's the exact same profile.
Oh, so you're gonna have 3-to-1 near the existing dune?
Correct. And then a 10-to-1. So it's a 3-to-1 slope to the 4-foot line. So we're looking at the proposed contour now, which is the solid line. If you look at that 4-foot line, that's where the 10-to-1 slope starts, just about.
A 4-foot in the existing?
That's the 4.
In the proposed, so the solid line that has a little square with the 4 in it,
Yeah.
that's about the line of where the 10-to-1 slope is gonna start.
Starting there and seaward?
Moving seaward.
And inside of the 4, it's 3-to-1?
Inside of the 4, it's 3-to-1 to the 7-foot contour, and then it's flat to the dune.
So you're applying the same ratio regardless of whether there's.
That's correct. It's the same,
But that's not inside the drift.
it's not, because there's no drift fence there, because the
But
commission
if you
didn't
follow, I
want.
mean, is that what you're doing where the drift fence is? Because the, I'm sorry. So,
I think the thing, John, is that regardless of whether the drift fence is there or not, on the entire beach, they're going 3-to-1 down to the 7 on this plan, and then south of the 7, they're going 10-to-1.
that's not what he just
No,
said.
from 7
He
to
just said-
4 is 3.
7 to 4 is 3-to-1, and then
And
4
4 to-
seaward is a 10-to-1.
Okay, fine, but
Okay,
regardless
so
of whether
if
the
I
drift
follow
fence is
this
there.
4 line, am I doing this right? I'm following the 4 line, following the 4 line. I'm
Can I look at
going
the,
up to the small drift fence, not the big one. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I missed your
I'm
question.
following the line, the solid line with the 4 block. And I follow it over to the front of the house, the
Picture, I
main
understand.
staircase.
Here's the
That
4.
4
He's saying
line
10-to-1 here
and
and 3-to-1
touches
here.
that very small drift
If you look at
fence,
this,
not the
Right.
big
you'll
drift
see
fence.
that
Right.
10-to-1 for the drift
So
fence here.
you're talking
Right.
Just over here.
10-to-1, you're talking 3-to-1.
Yeah, the 7-foot
All the
line,
way to that
which
small
is
drift
where the
fence.
fence
That's
is.
correct.
That's 7 right there.
So you're drawing down an AA is not accurate then, the illustration you have down there, because that shows the 3-to-1 starting at the drift fence. But
At the
actually
first
it
drift
starts
fence. It
about
actually-
3 or 4 feet in front of the drift fence.
So that section only shows the small drift fence. because where the steps are, there's no drift fence. If you look on the plan, the last step is about in line with where the drift fence would be. Another couple sections may help, but
But it's still several feet, and several feet in front of the drift fence, the big drift fence.
that's correct, yeah. So the larger drift fence is gonna be mostly buried by the project. And as the sand moves in and around it, as the sand erodes, the drift fence will be exposed, and then it'll start functioning again by trapping wind-blown
So
sand.
that drift
and-
fence, the larger drift fence is basically going to be in the middle of the 3-to-1 slope.
That's correct. It's actually, in that location, it is at the beginning of the 3-to-1 slope, and in the in the eastern portion, it's behind, it's landward of the 3-to-1 slope. So the fence, I guess I misspoke. The fence really doesn't have much to do with the slope. So basically,
No, it
what,
doesn't.
saying we're doing the 3-to-1. The other
and
side.
I tried to just say that looking at the section view there. So basically what we're looking to do is construct a flat berm from where the dune line is now, the scarp line, of about 15 to 5 feet depending on the area. Slope it down on a more gradual slope than it is now. And then once we get back to the beach grade, to have a 10-to-1 slope, which matches the natural slope of the beach and is also in compliance with the letter.
Yeah, but I suggest your beach grade starts after the drift fence then.
That's in this section view, yeah. And if you look at in the eastern area as well, yes, the drift fence is landward of the 3-to-1 slope.
So,
Coach is behind.
seems to me the
But it's
spirit
not
of the
here,
letter
because he's saying this is the
from
fence here, which is, he's saying
NEHSP
this is where the
is to
3-to-1
keep
starts, right here, where
everything
the 7 is.
on the beach flat for the plovers. And what you're doing is you're squeezing the plovers seaward by putting a steep slope up to the elevation 4. And then you're leaving a flat spot behind the drift fence. I have questions about whether that's really, given the practical issue that you're trying to achieve, which is get enough sand on the beach to nourish the beach, but you still have to comply with what NEHSP is requiring for habitat protection, and I'm not sure you've threaded that needle here. It's just not clear to me.
They haven't seen the
Threaded.
plan, so I don't really think we should spend all that much time on it
All right.
until they see it and then give their comments on whether they think it's appropriate.
Okay.
Good point.
So it's going
Right,
back
Mr.
to-
Chairman, if I could just address the vote through you, please. So I think the last time we were here, our understanding was, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but our understanding was that we were gonna come back and address the walkway. All other items pretty much aside, because that was the most pressing issue on this property right now. Mr. Judge has parents that are elderly, they have a hard time getting up and down the beach, and our goal is really to address the walkway so that we can get his parents on the beach adequately and safely in the spring. So we are open to your suggestions, okay? This is not a carved in stone project. We don't have to be one specific way. Mr. and Mrs. Judge just want to be able to use their property effectively.
Well, I think we go back to natural heritage with that particular question. And,
Okay, but that, I don't think this plan or this proposal changes what we've already discussed about the walkway. We came in last time and I specifically asked, with all due respect, are there any other comments or any other concerns that you may have regarding this walkway? And I think it was unanimous at that last meeting that there were no other concerns.
Well, my question was, does, where it terminates is the same,
We aren't proposing a change to where the stairs terminate.
Okay.
That doesn't change, and we
that's-
don't want to change that.
that's
We just want
important.
safe and adequate access to the beach.
Right.
We've already given up the entire westward fence. And Mr. Judge is also willing to give up some more, as long as he can use his property safely. Our main concern is the area between the two center groins at this time. We would like to begin construction of that walkway. We will not extend any further than what was proposed. We will not do anything any different than what we've already discussed regarding the walkway. And we're happy to come back at another meeting and readdress your concerns regarding any additional drift fence or how far forward we push the dune or how far back we push the dune. I mean, as I said, that is negotiable. Mr. and Mrs. Judge just want to do this the right way. That's why they're here. But they also want to use their property that they pay a lot of money for. And, you know,
I agree with your points, but I think it makes sense to approve this in whole, and you know, they're not gonna use that property until next season. So I do think it makes sense to go back to Natural Heritage, get their responses, and then approve this in whole.
But what happens, Mr. Chairman, and again, please, with all due respect, what happens next time that we're here the fifth time and there's another set of issues and there's another set of concerns? How many times do we come back before the walkway is okay?
Well, I think it's just the dune slope that they're concerned about. So we just need to get NHESP's approval, and then that way you won't have to revise the nourishment part of it anymore, and then they can approve it as a whole.
Well, now
I'm not
NH
hearing much concern with the walkway.
Well, now that you brought it up, please revisit what the walkway is, because when I was there last time, you had the cement stairs, and then, if I remember right, then there was kind of like sand,
Correct.
and then there had been like a temporary, like stairs or something that got washed out in the last storm, I think, and there was a
Correct.
drop-off.
Correct.
So what are we proposing? Please revisit what's being proposed on how you're gonna handle that.
Okay, so he has a walkway that, he has a walking path there now. Okay, and because they're walking on the sand, there is no growth at all.
Right.
They have a filter barrier there, so there's just no vegetation there. It cannot grow. So what we're proposing to do is build an elevated walkway just above the surface, all the way down to where it ends now, where that staircase was. And if you will, keep in mind that that staircase that was there, where if you go to the property, where you see it's eroded in, that staircase was 5 or 6 feet proud of that. So that last storm that we had carried away that entire staircase, and it's gone. So we just want to put back what was there. We don't want to do anything, we don't want to extend beyond what's there. We just want a safe walkway down. Our first meeting, we were going to leave the concrete stairs so that we didn't cause any additional damage to that area. It was recommended that we remove the staircase. So we've also put that on the plans, that we'll hammer out the staircase and get it out of there in its entirety. So we've tried to do everything that you've asked of us. We honestly have. We're trying to comply in every which way we can. I just, for practicality, and it's gonna get to a point where we're working in extreme cold. We have a window to get this done before the spring, and when we haven't proposed anything different on that walkway. So I ask you, please, as a board, to please consider the fact that we need to get that started. And if we wait another month for that letter, we're 2 more meetings out. And then we have the holidays. You know, we have Christmas. Now we're back in January. We don't know how long that letter's gonna take to come back. We don't know how long they're gonna take to give us new comments on what we've already proposed based on a slight modification to a drift fence.
Well, let me ask Nikki this. Would this be addressed typically with just an email response to supplement the letter, or would they issue a new letter?
It'll basically be an email response on whether the slope, the 3-to-1 changing to the 10-to-1 is gonna be okay, and then she might revise the letter. But I think she got the revised plan and got a new letter to us today, and that took like a day.
Yeah.
The old one came to us yesterday or Friday.
Yep.
So the letter that is on Dropbox now, which is what I was reading, was in response to this plan?
It was a plan before this.
But I think the actual official letter from her is basically the exact same thing.
What do you mean the official letter? Did it take into account what is laid out in this plan?
No, they haven't seen this one, that's what they
Right,
said in the
okay.
beginning. So once they get this plan, she'll look at it, she'll either say yes or no, and I don't think it will, she should have a letter to us no later than next meeting, if not earlier.
You know, I can understand your urgency and your frustration. On the other hand, if you were coming to us with just a walkway to get the elderly parents down to the beach, that walkway would be easier to approve than beach nourishment. When you have added in beach nourishment, and you have added in various slopes and engineering feats, that makes it more complex.
I can respect that. I do. But all I'm saying is that at the last meeting, I addressed the urgency of the walkway. And it was pretty much a
And you
unanimous,
changed the slope.
but we weren't going to address the beach nourishment. We were going to address the fence, and we were going to address the walkway. That's what I asked at the end of that meeting. And I asked if anyone had any additional comments that we should come back prepared for, because the walkway was urgent. Now, it seems like we've lost a lot of time talking about the fence that we gave up, and we haven't even addressed the walkway.
Well,
So-
are there any comments around the table, just to frame things? The walkway, our regs allow a 4-foot pathway to the beach. It's very traditional in this part of Harwich to have a pathway and not a walkway, but we can allow a new structure in that particular zone. I think it's a variance to have that new structure, but we have allowed them for things like this, physical hardship. So I don't think you heard any real objections, but let's go around quickly. Did anyone have any comments on the walkway?
Well, my only concern, oh, go ahead.
Abstain.
My only concern when you talked about the cement stairs, my question was last time was how deep do they even go? And I don't remember if we were still gonna remove them or not, because the old handrail, the top of that rail where there was a rail and the fitting was only about a foot above the ground. And my question was, how deep did those stairs go? So if you start tearing those out, what damage could that happen?
We are happy to leave the stairs. Our original intent was to leave them because it was less invasive. We were gonna, and I mean, they seemed very sturdy, so how I was gonna construct the walkways, I was gonna use that basically as a concrete base, as a footing for the stairs at the end, so that we wouldn't have to dig up the dune. That was
Because my
intent.
concern
That
was how many stairs were going down into that dune, how deep they could be.
There's
I mean,
about
the original.
6 steps total.
And you would tie into that concrete?
I would
Oh.
plan,
For the very last step would tie into that.
it would tie in, so there's a transition. I was gonna make a transition at the walkway, so as it shows right now, it's just one long pitch.
My question, you said 6 steps, that's what's
what's
exposed?
exposed, yes.
I was concerned about how deep they could be and how many steps there could be below because of the fact that there was an old railing there.
Right.
And the top of that railing was only about a foot above the ground, so that the stairs could have been a lot deeper was my concern.
Right, it does look like it was a precast unit, so those, I mean, I could be wrong there, but we're, in all honesty, we're trying not to dig anywhere we don't need to dig. So, we haven't gone down alongside of that, but if it's a precast unit, it's probably no more than 5 feet high. So it wouldn't go down more than an extra 3 or 4 feet below what you see now.
Any further comments on the staircase and
I
steps?
don't know how we can improve the staircase if we don't know where it ends.
We do know
It's
where it is.
proposed to end where it ends in the
Yeah.
plan.
It's going
I know, but
right
we
where the
don't know
walkway
what the
is.
slope is there, so if it's a 3-to-1 slope there, it's gonna end in a different spot than a 10-to-1 slope. If that 3-to-1 slope never gets approved, and you have to stick with the 10-to-1 slope, where's the end of your staircase?
So, the end of this here, I can understand what you're saying. If it's gonna come out, I mean, I'd be happy to leave the entire end of that staircase off, if that was your condition, and then we can make the final adjustment. But there's a lot of work landward of that dune right now. And, we're open to any conditions that you guys would, I wouldn't say any conditions, but any reasonable conditions to assist us in.
This is the seaward limit of the stairs here. If, for whatever reason, if that existing grade has changed significantly by the time of construction, and that last landing before the last set of stairs needs to be shortened, it can be shortened to ensure that that's the seaward limit of the stairs. If more stairs needed to be added, or for whatever reason. But that's the seaward limit of the stairs.
So, I'm sorry, but in this drawing, it looks like the seaward limit of the stairs are actually buried.
That's correct. That's how it's done in a lot of cases.
I see. So you could construct that, and if you were left with a 10-to-1 slope there, for whatever reason, the stairs would be at the 10-to-1 slope.
They would just be underground, we just bury it.
In a lot of cases, we'll bury the last couple rungs of the stairs just to account for beach erosion, just so that, as the beach erodes, you're not left with a 2-foot drop there.
Right. The way these are constructed, actually, that whole staircase could be buried. It isn't gonna hurt anything. It just, if we build it to walk out on the very bottom tread, and you have to bury a couple treads, and you're just walking down on the 4th tread instead of the 5th tread or the 6th tread. So, I mean, it really doesn't matter. When we construct something like this, it would be marked out by the engineers. Land surveyors would go out there and mark the ends of that. So whatever you see on this plan, you can rest assured that it's gonna be pinned in the field, and we're gonna build right to those lines. If it's up in the air until we do any kind of beach erosion, then it gets taped off and doored off, and then we'd have to fill in at that time when it was approved. But at least we can do 2 different things simultaneously. We could begin construction while you guys address the
Well,
beach
so we
nourishment.
can't approve the stairs without approving everything, because that's what you applied for. We can't do a partial order of conditions for the stairs.
Okay.
So what I suggest is you get that to NHESP tomorrow. As soon as they respond, you either say they'll CC us.
Yeah.
We'll either know that they're okay with that plan as is.
Right.
And then Amy can draft up orders for the next meeting, and we can vote on them. And we'll discuss it again, and then vote on the order of conditions. Or if you have revised changes, just make sure you get it to us as soon as possible. That shows the exact layout of where the stairs are gonna be, exact nourishment slope that NHESP has approved, and then we can still draft up an order.
Right.
And I think we can, no matter what, I think we can get an order out next.
At the next hearing.
Which isn't any sooner than it would have been
Right.
if the plan was approved today. So
Okay.
I don't think it'll delay you too much more.
That sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Just, if I could again, Mr. Chairman, through you, are there any immediate heavy concerns that any of you can think of? I mean, what's going through your mind? If you don't mind, if you'd be so kind to just let us know. Because if there's something that we should address, I would like to make sure that we address it before we send this back to have it reviewed again. I don't want to have to send this back another time if we make any changes. So I'm just trying to be practical, and if you could please cooperate with us on that end, as you have in the past, it would be helpful.
All right, thank you. Haven't heard from Jim. We've heard from most of everyone else, I think.
Yeah, I don't see any issues with the stairs and walkway as approved. What was the, you have a decking plan for that?
It's going to be E-Pay decking, all natural material, no pressure treated.
It might want
No
some
plastics.
spacing between, not sure what that is typically.
I'm surprised it wasn't put in here.
Yeah, we 3/4 of an inch, is that what we ask for
we-
usually? We usually ask for a little more on the dune so the beach grass can grow
Right.
under it,
Right.
actually.
We usually go 5.5-inch planks, 1-inch spacing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right,
that,
That's
I
more
would,
than our regulation.
Yeah, that's-
I would think, yeah.
That's typical for,
So with that, I see that being as, maybe would help to stabilize the dune if anything.
Okay.
Seems appropriate. I think if anything, if there's gonna be any issues, it's just with really getting, NHSP totally on board with your nourishment and slope. Seems to be. That's still a little tricky, I think, but.
Good. Any more comments, John?
Just one other, I don't know, for clarification or whatever. You stated, I think, that, oh no, it was the letter that stated that planting beach grass was okay behind the fence, but not seaward of the fence. But again, that becomes ambiguous in the western half of the beach where there is no fence. So just for the sake of avoiding confusion next time, it would be best if that point were also made completely clear, you know. Where can the beach grass be and where can it be? So that when we see the letter, and we're trying to, at least for me, I will try to correlate what's in the letter with what's on the plan. And if I can't correlate it, I'm gonna have more questions.
Sure.
That's
fair.
I have a
That's fair.
question too. Nikki, do we have a time that they have to have this construction and beach nourishment finished by in order not to impact the piping
Yes, it'll have to be
floors?
done in April. I'm not sure if it's April 1st or 15th.
April 1st is,
It's either one. I think it's probably April 1st, but yeah.
okay, so everything has to be finished, including the beach
Mm-hmm.
nourishment, by April 1st?
Yes, and then nothing, if it wasn't done, nothing can happen all summer until they're gone.
That's what
Correct.
I wanted you to be
This
clear
April.
on.
Oh, I'm clear on that, yes, so
There you go.
that's part of my concern, is that window's starting to really get narrow.
How about plans for planting that upper nourishment spot? Do we have sufficient plans on that here?
Replacing plantings in the slope in the dune, or not necessarily? Okay.
It's just planting beach grass, I think, is.
Yeah, do we have enough detail? Or what are you proposing for that?
Currently, the plan doesn't propose any beach grass, but we can reach out to the judges and discuss possibly planting on that. If this 3-to-1 slope is approved, we can discuss planting on that 3-to-1 slope behind the dune fence like the NHESP letter states, and on the berm as well to match what's kind of there naturally anyway.
Yep, that'd be helpful. Wouldn't add a ton of cost. you know.
Right.
Is
So-
that going to be one of our requirements?
I think I would like to see it, and I think we
That is the
discussed it a
plan.
little bit before.
Okay.
That is the plan, whatever we reconstruct, we do want to plant so that we can get a good root base, so
Yep.
that we don't lose the sand.
Yep, okay, so a
As
little,
quickly.
little detail then to that. in the
Yep, we'll
drawings.
add that to the plan.
Yep. Any other thoughts?
The only comment I would have is those concrete steps. I honestly don't see any need to remove them if the walkway's gonna be built over the top of them. I think it would cause more disturbance than benefit, just to leave them there.
Mhm. They define, I think, the limit of where they should be too, which might be helpful. Okay. And the one thing, just to reinforce, it's not part of this proposal, but I do think that proposals to nourish below the mean high water, it's gonna be challenging, even beyond, eelgrass. It's an issue that we've paid a lot of attention to, so just looking forward.
Understood, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you and Hines or whoever else I can discuss that with to make sure it's done in the best management practices possible,
Right.
if applicable.
If approved. Okay, well then, I guess what we should do is move to continue this to our next meeting. What date would that be?
December 4th, I believe.
Okay, so we continue this notice until December 4th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
I think we're pretty clear.
Yeah, no, that's good, thank you.
I guess one last thing. So do you recommend that we leave the concrete steps for our final submission?
I think you heard that from a couple members.
I would agree with that.
I don't have a strong
see
feeling
that.
either
Okay.
way, whatever you guys think is best, but it sounds like it might be less impactful.
That sounds good. We'll plan on leaving them then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you pass that back to Nikki?
Next one, if you want to follow up, I'll sign a few more and touch base tomorrow on the phone or something. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next we have a notice of intent for 2 Ocean Ave, 1 Zifla Ave Road, 5 Atlantic Street, a proposal to replace a bulkhead.
Good evening again. Charlie Agro with Coastal Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the applicants. The proposed project is to reconstruct the existing steel sheet pile bulkhead at the reference properties with a new, I believe, vinyl sheet pile bulkhead adjacently or immediately adjacent to and in front of the existing steel sheet pile bulkhead. The bulkhead will be driven. There'll be a whaler system and timber pile, soldier pile system is shown on the section AA. The existing sheet pile wall that's there now was built, I believe, in the 70s and has far exceeded its a planned lifetime. And the plan is to just reconstruct it with new sheet piles right in front of it, containing the old sheet piles behind it and what is existing behind. The resource areas were actually changed from the original application. Prior to the storms from this last fall, there was a small stretch of beach grass and therefore a coastal dune immediately seaward of the existing bulkhead. When I went to the site to stake it for conservation viewing a couple weeks ago, I noticed that dune had been completely washed away. So I sent in a letter to Nikki to state that the dune was no longer there with some pictures on it. So I don't think that should be included as a resource area anymore. So the resource areas that are involved here are coastal bank and coastal beach, land subject to coastal storm flowage. Again, the project is to minimize the impact on the beach by driving new sheets directly in front of the existing sheet pile wall. This is what's typically done, or what we typically do for bulkhead reconstruction, because the alternative of removing the sheets and excavating behind it leaves the risk of the entire bank collapsing and then bringing debris and upland sediment onto the coastal beach, which is not desirable. The new sheet piles themselves are about 14 feet in width, or I'm sorry, 14 inches in width, so they'll extend about 14 inches seaward of the existing steel sheet piles. It's a helical anchored tieback system that adds some additional support, and the proposed bulkhead will improve the stability of the coastal bank, which is not a sediment source, because it currently has a coastal engineered structure in a bulkhead, and it will continue to provide protection against wave energy and coastal storm flowage from any storms, and it will increase the stability of the coastal bank as well. And with any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Nikki, any thoughts for us?
I can't really think of any better way to do this. I mean, if you take the bulkhead out, it's gonna destroy the property. I don't think we're beyond using fiber rolls or anything here, so it's really just get it as close to the existing bulkhead as possible. It won't really change the way the area acts currently. So.
Okay, thank you.
We do suggest when you, Amy said she believes that you nourish in the spring out here usually, and she said maybe try and plant any nourishment that ends up going on there.
I don't think they place nourishment in the spring, because the problem is the access. And I think the only access, from the beach, if I remember, is miles down the beach in one way and miles down the beach in the other direction. So just getting out there, I think, is more disturbance than the nourishment would be in the first place.
So if they end up being part of the town-wide beach nourishment that occurs,
I'm sure they wouldn't be opposed to that. Yep.
Beach grass, yeah.
It's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone, okay.
Yeah.
And on a side note, I know it came up on the site visit today, this has been approved by the Board of Selectmen. There's an easement, it looks like, onto our town beach that's in front of them. And then you would get the beach access permit if, for some reason, you needed to do it from the beach.
Right.
Yeah, there was nothing there today. It's
Okay.
right up, it's all steel.
The photographs show quite a bit of beach grass there, but that's gone.
I was shocked to see it, yeah.
Here's the new one.
Okay, gone. Okay, let's go around the table. John, any comments or questions?
Yeah, just wondering about, well, on the eastern, I didn't look at the western end, but on the eastern end, the existing steel whatever wall is buried in the concrete there, and so there is gonna need to be some disruption there? Are you gonna be tearing apart that? Because there's mortar stone revetment right next to there, which is mortared right up into the existing pile.
I believe the contractor is going to try to cut the sheets and place some fill and maybe bolt it to the existing steel sheet pile wall in that area
Oh, without burying it at all?
without burying it, and the support for the wall is going to come from the tiebacks themselves, not from the returns of the wall.
Okay, so there is no plan to take it apart?
No, yeah.
Okay, all right. That was my only question.
Okay, Mark?
No, I don't think I do at the moment.
More of curiosity, I'm not an engineer, so, I mean, like you said, that wall was, the current bulkhead was built in the 70s, rusting out and everything.
Right.
And yet you can use that to tie in to the new vinyl sheet, and that's structurally sound to, that it won't collapse and...
That's correct. Just on the returns in that area, along the front face of the wall, it's going to be totally reliant on the tieback system, which is a pretty extensive tieback system with soldier piles and 3 whalers, because it's a pretty high reveal for a vinyl sheet pile wall, and so that's why it's such a hefty tieback system, the way it's shown with the double soldier piles, strong plate in front of the soldier piles,
Okay, so you're
and
driving
helical
piles
anchors.
in front of that steel
That's
wall.
correct.
Gotcha, okay. I didn't understand that, okay. So you're not tying to that steel wall, bulkhead, that's gonna be behind?
That's going to be
piles.
behind it. And the new wall is designed basically saying that steel wall wasn't even there and was all active earth
So
pressure.
the piles are being driven down, I don't know how far, and then the vinyl is really just resting, kinda, you're not really driving the vinyl, that's being tied up to the piles?
No, if you look at the bulkhead profile design detail, it kind of shows it a little bit more. You have the existing steel sheet pile bulkhead. The proposed steel sheet piles are going to go directly against the existing, and then on the outward side, on the seaward side of the proposed piles, there's going to be a 3 whaler system with a soldier pile in front of that, and the tiebacks are going to be going through the existing steel sheet pile wall, the proposed, as well as the soldier piles, and the tieback is going to be holding that soldier pile, which holds the whalers, which all holds the new wall.
So there's gonna have to be a trench dug to accomplish all that, right? Because you're doing, looks like here, there's construction done beneath the grade there, is that what you call the horizontal piece of whale?
Right, so yes, just to get
thing
that,
is- The bottom one is underground, it's below grade, right?
correct, by
So
a foot or so.
So they're gonna have to be, is that gonna be hand dug, or are there gonna be machines on the beach to dig that out so that can be done?
It could be hand dug. I think the only piece of machinery that would be on the beach would be a small bobcat, if even required. I think all the work is planned to be done from the top down.
Okay.
Jim?
Yeah, the only alternative I could see that might be better, resource-wise, would be to do a rock structure. Be maybe more work. I don't know what the cost differences are, but that would probably be better habitat-wise than keeping all that arsenic-soaked lumber off the beach. But other than that, obviously there's going to be a new hard structure there either way. So that's my only comment.
Any thoughts there?
Well, I think if a rock revetment is built in, you'd either be having the crest of the revetment along this line, which would then be putting the toe of the revetment further seaward, which then again is more impact on the coastal beach. The alternative to that would then be building that rock revetment into the bank, and they would lose a lot of their yard as it already is and push the coastal bank closer to the properties, and a revetment's not as strong as the bulkhead is there. So the owners aren't going to want to do that. and I wouldn't recommend it from an engineering perspective.
They are entitled to replace in kind. What's gonna happen to the space, just landward of the new bulkhead? You're gonna have a little bit of space between, the metal one that is existing and the new one. Is there any proposal for what to do with that space? Is it gonna be occupied with plantings?
That's currently what's there, is there a planting area. There'll be some kind of, the bulkhead will be capped, and I think because right now, I think the grass goes right up to the existing steel sheets, so I don't think there's really much plans for it as of right now.
Do you think the owners would entertain a proposal to have that planted with some native material, just in that new footprint? What is it, about a foot?
About, yeah.
About a foot. Is that something you could bring back and see if they would entertain having that as opposed to just bringing the lawn right up to the new bulkhead?
I don't see that as being an issue. Would there be any way to close the hearing tonight with the revised plan that shows that?
I think we're close. Let's see what everyone else has to say.
Yeah.
But we haven't heard it too much so far.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, Jim?
Yeah, just one other, just curious. So the existing steel bulkhead, does that have a tieback system as well?
I don't believe so. I'm not 100% sure.
And the reasoning for going with this whaler system rather than like just another row of steel
is to use the vinyl sheets. Steel sheets are probably about double the cost of the vinyl, and even given the high reveal in this location, even a new steel sheet pile wall, we probably design it to have a tieback system, because our design criteria is a little bit more strict now than it was, back then anyway. So it would just be more costly.
essentially requires the whalers
Right.
if you're doing a tieback system?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Okay.
I'm a little confused as to where you're suggesting these new plantings. Right now, the bulkhead and the grass come
Right.
right to each other. And now there will be, the new vinyl wall will be about 12 inches from the end of the grass.
Right.
And it will be capped
That's correct.
with vinyl or,
Either a vinyl cap or a timber cap.
timber cap. Okay, so where would the plantings be able to go?
In the space that's created by the bulkhead coming out a foot. The cap will be a cap, right? There'd still be a space created, or the cap occupy that space?
Well, the cap might occupy that space. That actually hasn't necessarily been worked out.
Otherwise, you'd,
And right now, we don't show a cap, so right now we do show that void space would be backfilled, and so it would probably be a similar scenario to what's there now with just the grass going up to the bulkhead. So, and I mean, that additional space will be almost like in pockets as the Z shape.
Right. It would still be an opportunity, I mean, it's encroaching on the resource area, a small amount, they're entitled to replace in kind, but if it's agreeable to the proponent, I think it could be a slight benefit. It's a long distance, just not very wide.
You can see there actually is existing planting in a small strip
Yeah.
that whole way.
Well, we could certainly condition to, they're gonna have to replant it, right? And so replant it with native plants.
Like in the small area with like a native grass seed mix work.
I would prefer to see a little more diversity.
I mean, it looks like there already are a mix of shrubs in that area.
I think there's maybe even a beach plum in one of the ends of it.
It's
I'm
like
not
that, there
necessarily
is,
sure.
And if we were to close, then I'd be happy if you could work that out with Nikki or Amy and,
Sure.
Plantings.
Could you just, as far seaward as they could go, do a row or something where everywhere has been disturbed?
Right. The disturbed area is pretty small width, but at the same time, why not try to, put something in there native that can have some little more benefit, and as opposed to having a lawn that would, possibly receive fertilizer or, chemical applications.
well, in a case like this, do we prohibit fertilizers and chemical applications?
Yeah, they're not really proposing to do much in the lawn, so I would say
No,
let's
they're not.
hear from the commissioners to see how they feel as we move towards conditioning this.
As far as I'm concerned, we certainly can. I mean, we've been doing that even on just basic flood zone properties, just to basically
Reduce that
force the
loading.
issue and reduce the loading, so.
Yeah.
I think the way our regulations are written and the way we've been, using them, that would be consistent.
Mhm.
Although this is a repair of something existing already. This is not a new plan. This is, bulkhead is deteriorating, needs a new bulkhead.
Do they have irrigation presently?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's not part of the project,
Right.
right? Yeah. All right, well, let's finish up with any other thoughts, and then we'll come back to, potential conditions. Anything else?
The only comment I would have is, from a record perspective, the agenda references a third address of 5 Atlantic Street. And that's not on the performance standard narrative. I don't know where.
That's the town beach, so in case they have to drive on the beach, they needed to include that in the butters notifications.
Oh, that's the staircase we were walking up?
So would that be part of our order of conditions? And is that part of the applicant? Town's not a client, is there? Another party to the
No, but
application.
just if you drive onto the beach, you have to notify the neighbors that abut that beach. So they had to include that in case there was going to be beach access. But I don't think we would give the town an order of condition. It would just be the other two addresses that we reported on.
Okay. So I think we're moving towards a rare vote on a first hearing for a shoreline structure. So that's good. Any other thoughts before we talk about conditions? I think there's just two concepts on the table for conditions. I don't know about replanting the beach grass on the seaward side since it was just blown out.
So this was the September 27th of 2018.
18.
That's where the grass was, and then this is
That's
November
amazing. Yeah,
6th
with winter.
of 2019. So
Yeah.
those-
So if it wants to come back on its own, it'll have a chance. I would like to request native plantings in that strip, landward of the space created by the new bulkhead. And so I think that's, unless folks feel otherwise.
No, I agree. That was what I was trying to clarify, because you had used the word cap, and then that's what you were raising, but then you're talking about backfilling.
Yes,
Would
even if
allow
there
you
was
to
a cap,
do
you would.
that.
Planting.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of puzzled by that concept.
What do you mean?
Just that I don't get how there's any room to do that in this plan.
About a foot.
Yeah, but that's
There's
the
the-
top of the actual wall there.
Yeah,
So-
I don't know if there really is much, I mean, once they cap the entire depth of the new bulkhead, so the only room you have left is that several inches of the old steel bulkhead.
So the cap would span the old steel and the new vinyl.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. In that case, then there might not be much space there.
And there already is essentially a 3-foot strip of mixed native plants. You see goldenrod and beach plum. and
Well, then let's request that'll be disturbed. And so let's request that's planted with native plants.
A 3-foot strip, say.
Now, if-
Preserved.
I know and speaking with the owners, they're trying to disturb as little as possible their own lawn and the planting area during construction. If during construction, this can be, since we're gonna be going right in front of the existing steel sheet piles, if we can do the construction without disturbing the plants the native plants that are in the existing planting area, would it still have to be replanted, or would that be, okay?
It's not disturbed. I think it's okay. I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
It'll be a good challenge for the contractor.
Right. But I think we'll have a condition that suggests that it's replanted with native plantings.
Yeah, we'll write something like, there just needs to be a strip of native plantings as far seaward as possible, and whether it's the ones that already exist, or whether you had to add more.
That sounds good.
Okay. How do folks feel about a chemical application limitation in the 0 to 50?
I'm for it. I just think, it's just time to make the change, so.
Yeah.
That's my feeling on it.
Okay.
I like the idea of being consistent, but I think it'd be a hard task to leach through that metal wall
Oh,
and
you'd be
pollute the,
You'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah, it gets down, it goes down and gets in the sand.
leaches down into the groundwater that's under there and then eventually gets into
Got it.
Nantucket Sound. I
You
think
just convinced
may
me.
take a little longer, but it'll get there.
Well, I suppose you could bring this back, we'll move tonight, and you could bring it back to the proponent. If they have strong objections, then you can come back and talk to us about it.
That sounds good.
So, all right, does somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the notice of intent for 2 Ocean Ave for the new bulkhead with the condition that after construction, there be a 3-foot strip of native plantings landward
Yeah.
of the existing steel bulkhead, which could be either a mix of what's there and new plantings, depending on what is disturbed. And the condition that the property come into compliance with chemical use regulations that are in place in Harwich.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, none opposed.
Thank you very much.
Here's the next one, which is the good aerial shot of what's already disturbed. That is helpful. So there's the top of the bench. It's disturbed, pretty far up.
Okay.
And they're just kind of reconfiguring it, but he'll go over that part.
Okay. All right, next we have a notice of intent for 27 Stranway, proposal for some hardscaping and planting.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Adelson. What I have over is just a simple hardscaping and planting project that I'm doing over there at 27 Strandwood for one of my clients, Jim Palermo. He's not here right now, he's down in Florida, so I figured I came here for him. So I'm pretty sure you guys have a copy of the
Yep.
pictures. So there's an existing patio there already, which flagstone, I think. So we're pretty much he's pretty much replacing it with pavers. And then the small retaining wall, he's gonna push it back and then convert that to a little sitting bench area. I also have some, I think, if you don't mind just passing these around, I think these have better view of what I should look like.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It's okay with the chair.
So there's an outdoor grill over there. I'm gonna build a base around that with veneer stone, cement block, just to hold it in place. And then there's actually a gas line that's gonna run from the house out to the grill. Also, there's gonna be a little fire pit in the middle too. Both the fire pit and the grill is gonna connect to the gas line. So, if you have any questions.
Okay, all right, well, let's see what Nikki has for any comments on this project. Thank you.
All right, so, like he said, he's moving the retaining wall back and then turning that into a kind of a seating bench, which originally we had thought he was doing a separate seating area, so that kind of addresses one of our issues. All of the work is in the 50-foot no disturb zone, which is, you know, as you guys know, it's no disturb zone, so it does kind of go against our regulations, but as you can see from the aerial photo, he's pretty much working in the same area that is already disturbed. I mean, the whole place is lawn pretty much up to the coastal bank, so I would say the whole lot is disturbed already. I believe when I was at the site the first time, the homeowner did seem to say that he fertilized. So that's definitely a condition we can put on, that he discontinues that. I think we need more clarification on what the exact square footage of everything is gonna be. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the part where I'm pushing back the retaining wall, it is around, it is actually 270 square feet, for the 3-to-1. I'm also adding, 776 square feet of plants,
So
native
you're
plant.
doing
Yeah,
a little over 1,000 square feet altogether then.
pretty much, yeah.
So then you would need 3,000 square feet?
No, well, where I'm pushing the bench back, that alone, it's, I would say, 270 square feet.
If I may, for the
Yeah.
record, Thad Eldridge, I'm East Southeast. I did the base plan, the aerial drone photo. I believe that you said that 270 square feet of increase, and then you have 776 square feet of mitigation?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so
Sorry about that.
you're,
Well, that's not what this says.
Oh.
With this.
we were, yeah, that's why I was asking for clarification. We weren't really sure what the numbers on the plan meant. So then the rest of the work, the new pavers and stuff, it's just in existing?
Yeah.
So it's not?
I'm just pretty much removing the flagstone and putting permeable
All right,
pavers,
so you
yeah.
need 3 times the 270
70.
square foot.
Yeah.
All right, and then, they're just proposing the flowers, correct, for the plantings?
Yes, I think it was 4 different type.
So I don't mind the native, flowers with the pollinators and everything, but I do think it should be more of a mix of native shrubs as well. And, since you lost really your main one tree recently, I would like at least 1 tree planted
Okay.
somewhere. Doesn't have to be in their view, it can be off to the sides.
Okay.
So just add a little more diversity to the plantings would be good. It cannot be, at first we were thinking it was gonna be an impervious patio, which I would not have recommended approval, but if it's pervious in the same layout as the current stones, just a little less spacing, I don't necessarily have a huge issue with that. And really, I struggle with it being in the 50-foot no disturb zone and being more work, but I think the improvements that we could put on the property can kind of outweigh what they're doing. A lot more plantings would go in, no more fertilizer. They do have irrigation, I'm not sure how far out it was.
Yes, it's all the way to the bed, actually, the back there.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Do you want to start, John?
Sure, why not? So, just looking at the sketch plan here, you said you're moving the retaining wall back, but you have something labeled as a retaining wall that seems to be the boundary of the whole patio area.
That's, if you don't mind, that's the.
But that labels this thing as retaining wall.
Yeah, this one, the little walls, will be this right here, so.
So the elevation of the paved area or whatever, the patio area will be at grade? It's not raised with a retaining wall?
No, it will be flat. The pavers will be flat on the ground.
Okay, so there isn't any real retaining wall on the border here?
I mean, wait, which location are you talking about?
Here.
No, that's just the border for the
Okay.
patio.
Yeah, I don't. So I guess my other question about this, the question in my mind about what kind of mitigation is required is, what is being counted as new hardscape here? I mean, one might look at the the area that's sort of part lawn and part embedded granite pavers, that's clearly a nice, very permeable area. So are we counting that as existing hardscape, or are we counting that as part of the lawn, which is being supplanted by just monolithic hardscape here? And I assume that that's being counted as existing hardscape, and so you're just counting a little bit of extra hardscape here, is that right?
I would consider it already hardscape. It adds no value, obviously, to the habitat.
Well,
And
except,
as long as the new stuff remains pervious, I don't see that it's really much of a change, as long as it's pervious.
so when somebody builds hardscape on existing lawn, we count that as something that has to be remediated, right? So it's a little up in the air to me whether we need to count this sort of half lawn, half rock area, which is it fish or fowl? I'm not sure which it is.
I mean, I look at it as it's a disturbed area. That's not natural, so. I don't know. I see your point.
Well, the whole area is a disturbed area,
Right.
that's not natural, but. So then, what is the area that, can you identify for me where new hardscape is going in that you're compensating for?
Yes. So pretty much back here is all nothing but like little
Yeah,
pine shrub.
this stuff has nothing to do with
Yeah, it's not
anything,
in
right?
there right now, but where all the brown areas are, that's where I'm adding new.
Yeah, but what's the new hardscape that you're adding that to remediate?
So this is how the retaining wall is right now. So I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna cut that back right around here. That's the 270 square feet that I'm cutting back.
I see,
Yeah.
okay. All right,
This is similar to over here.
I forget what's in here, what is that there?
There was a pine tree there.
Yeah, but this area is a planted area, is that right? This area here.
Up above the retaining wall, which is
Yeah.
grass and
Just
that
wild grass.
tree that they cut.
So that's what you're compensating for,
Yeah.
that area? Okay, all right. I don't have anything more.
Okay. Mark, any thoughts?
Sure. The seating wall that you're proposing around the backside of the fire pit, looks like there's a wing wall off to either side. Is that intended to be a double-faced wall? And is it a dry stack wall? Is it stone? Is it gravity block? What's it made of?
It's put center block, and I'm just gonna attach the veneer.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it's also gonna be a backrest on top of the little small wall.
Yep.
Yeah. So they can sit on it. The backrest is not gonna go all the way.
So how far is that gonna go? Is that gonna go all the way down the wings?
No, just right on, pretty much around the fire pit. It's all
Just that semicircle?
center circle, yeah. The wall itself will continue like it is on the
Mm-hmm.
on the picture over there by the walkway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
do have a question on between the picture and the floor plan. So this one shows the retaining wall going into
This
the
is
yard.
yeah. This one is wrong.
Okay,
That was
so
my
it would
first
just
plan. Yeah,
go-
it will start exactly where it is. Right. I'm
Okay,
just
so
gonna.
we just want a revised plan showing that, so that we don't get confused down the line.
All right.
Where's the gas line gonna come from?
Straight from the house.
Whereabouts though? All the mechanicals are on this side. Is there a gas meter out here? Is it over here someplace? Where, do you know
I
where it's
believe
located?
his kitchen is around here, but underneath the basement, he's gonna run the line out and then come scroll around to here.
So that's gonna go through the house before you come out and then
Yeah.
pick, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Choice in pavers,
Say that again.
the choice in pavers.
Permeable pavers, the Teco Block Blue 80.
Okay, is that categorized for full permeability?
need be, I can also install it by opening it wider.
To be permeable, it's gonna have to be spaced.
Yeah, there is space in between. It's more than a quarter of an inch.
Have they got a tab, so they're automatically spread? Is that how they're set up?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's even for the, if you don't mind, just do it there. I'll show
Sure.
it to you.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with the borders too.
Okay.
The soldier course, whatever you call them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Polymeric sand?
No,
No poly sand?
no poly sand, because the water has to go too, so it's pretty much gonna be like
Okay.
regular sand or just those little pee-wee rocks, you call them?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, rice stone, okay.
Yeah. What you call them, rice stone, I don't know.
Yeah, depending where you go.
And then obviously underneath the crushed stones and the fabric on top of it.
Okay, I think that the specifics of how the pavers are installed, I think needs to go in the order of conditions
Will the,
to make sure that it does actually conform with the specifications of what the manufacturer recommends.
I have one other question. Will the geograde work too, or?
I would have to revert to the manual, but I don't think so. The object is not to have the gravel underneath get silted,
I see what you mean,
okay?
yeah.
So the water's gonna pass through the fabric, through the sand, and then if there's a layer of actual stone, washed stone, there's a place for it to go before it dissipates.
Excuse me.
You may consider going down this long wall where you've got that retaining wall out there that keeps all the water away from going downstairs.
Around it,
This whole walkway down that side, I think you need to be really concerned about the thickness of the stone underneath, so you've got adequate space to catch the water that lays out there, because right now, you've just got stone flagging.
Yeah.
They're stepping stones.
yeah. It's not-
Okay?
Yeah,
And the water's gonna dissipate to a degree by itself until it puddles up and then runs over the wall and then goes in the house. But if you're gonna pave this surface, you have to provide some place for that water to go, because it's gonna shed more water because of the density of the stone.
yeah.
So, again, I mean, the specifics of how the base is constructed is gonna be very important to the success of it.
I understand.
I guess my only other comment would be to ask for more diversity in the plantings. More is better.
Well, we picked, I mean, he picked 4 different,
I don't see that as being adequate. I think there needs to be a better selection, and I think you need more.
whatever.
Yeah, we saw, where is it here? Yeah, some native shrubs, a tree or two. Sweet fern was one that Amy mentioned, but we can work with you on adding those in sporadically along with the flowers.
Ah, perfect, yeah.
Okay, Stan.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So we're saying we're adding 270 square feet of new hardscape?
Yeah, 270.
Okay, because I wasn't, okay, I'm just trying to clarify that.
And is the proposed mitigation 3 times that?
Yes.
It's
776.
Yeah.
at the moment, but I'm gonna suggest adding some more shrubs and trees, for the diversity. So it'll end up being a little more.
Based on the notes here, I thought, my calculations, they're adding 500 square feet of hardscape.
We were confused exactly what,
I'm looking at this hand drawing here, and there it says excavating 270 and then planting 776.
we thought they were getting rid of 270 and then adding 776, but that's not the
No,
case.
they're planting 776.
776 and then just, so like, right here, so this, they're gonna
Yeah.
stay in this,
So it's staying in the
yeah, but
existing.
they're gonna add, this circle is gonna now be paved as well.
And
So
the-
Are
that's
adding.
the, so
How
that's
much
the
are they adding?
270.
270.
Mhm.
And I guess I was kind of like with John, where when I look at the plant, it's grass and stone, but now it's a full patio, but I don't know. It's
Well,
a-
the grass kind of grew over the,
I know, no, I'm just saying, it's kind of a hybrid, it's not what I think of.
Well, it's considered flagging.
Right.
And the permeable paver is in such a fashion to receive the water, it actually
Right.
gives it a
No, I
place to
understand.
dissipate.
Right.
So there's,
No, I'm
There's-
just saying.
there's a
it's-
method
it's
to it.
just a little bit of a hybrid from what I'm thinking of normally.
Mhm.
But I guess the other thing is that that lawn is being fertilized now.
I believe so. I think that's what he said.
And I don't know if
Yeah.
there's an irrigation system
There
there,
is, yeah.
but, I don't know if we can do anything about the fertilization there.
There,
we see everywhere else,
Condition.
so I know.
So, I mean, that would be my recommendation going.
back in '04, on the order of conditions, there was a condition that they could use a slow release organic, I think. I forgot to bring that file. And there was a condition, I'm not sure if it said in perpetuity, but it did say this is the fertilizer you can use. And that, it was attached to a certificate of
Are you
compliance.
maintaining the property now?
No, I'm just doing the,
Um,
Well,
Maybe
that
it's-
would
But I don't
be,
necessarily
Excuse
see
me.
why we couldn't
I'm
get
sorry.
rid of fertilizer, because this is a new filing, so
Right.
I don't know, I have to ask Amy about that, I guess.
that would be my recommendation.
Were all these structures in compliance with that order?
That's another question we had, so the house was built in like '04, and it was bought by Mr. Palermo in, I think, 2007, and it had a certificate of compliance from John Chatham, but none of this was on the approved site plan, it was just the house is all that was on that plan. And Google Earth is too blurry from 2004 till 2007. And so when Mr. Palermo bought it, this was there, but I don't know if it was added before or after their certificate of compliance.
Right, is that something we can get more definition to? I think that's really important, because this is all a no disturb zone.
Right.
And we're kind of talking about tweaking things, but in truth, it's all a variance. Any new structure is a variance, right?
Right.
Did they request a variance?
Not specifically, I don't believe.
Yeah, so it's a little unusual that with our plans, they're so low in detail, and I would expect a variance request. And confirmation that these structures were put in correctly and approved.
I don't know if we'll be able to get it, since it's very obvious that it was there when the house transferred, and I don't know I don't know if we can find out how to contact the previous owners, or if John Chatham would even remember, being that it was 15 years
I
ago.
suggest that if the house was transferred with these improvements there, you should have obtained evidence that they were approved at the time, when he purchased the property. Absent that, I don't see it's our obligation to go back and find it necessarily.
I agree, but I think it's a factor in what we're considering, because we're talking about.
Oh, I agree 100%,
Yeah.
no question about that.
And so, in my mind, either you don't allow any changes to the no disturb zone, or you mitigate fully for that full footprint, especially if that footprint was not authorized. So that's something I'm struggling with. We're seeing the 776, it could be more than that. And so, they're entitled to, replace what's there if it was authorized originally.
And yeah, I'll have to dig some more.
Right, and anything new is a variance. So. Well, let's continue around. Did you have anything else? No? Jim?
To that point, have you calculated what the footprint of the new hardscape is, disregarding the flagstones?
you mean like the total square footage?
Yes.
For the whole thing?
Yes, yeah.
I believe it's around 1,700. Because if you added the walkway,
Some of that may be outside of the 50-foot zone, but
yeah.
I think it would be important to get that calculation. I think, ultimately with mitigation, the project could be a benefit to the area, but maybe it's entitled to more mitigation. It's just a little unclear with these drawings. Basically, I guess I don't totally understand, is the flagstone area is being considered hardscape right now completely. So I'm kind of asking that. Is that the impression? Yeah. That is kind of marginal to me.
There is some function to the grass. Right, it's not the same.
Right, yeah, it's not quite the same. But, so there may just need to be some more mitigation, I think. Mark's point, the installation's always important on pervious pavers, but that done right will take care of the water. So if we get the mitigation numbers right and have the diversity in the plantings, maybe some beach plums, some other native shrubs, get the fertilizer situation changed. I personally don't necessarily have a problem with the irrigation. It's more the fertilizer and the other chemicals. But I think with all those things addressed, it could really be a benefit, but it might have to be more mitigation depending on exactly how that calculates out, it seems. So that's my take on it.
Carol?
I got a couple comments, but this particular wall, is that, it's called a retaining wall, but what is it retaining?
It's not,
It doesn't go all the way up.
It's
This
gonna be
one is
more
wrong,
like
yeah.
this. so we'll get a
More
revised
like
plan, like where they're getting rid of that, and it's just gonna follow.
Okay, so I'm
It's not gonna
say,
go any further, but it's just gonna be, more
Yeah.
formalized patio, and then this part's gonna go back.
okay, so I'm gonna say that I think for me to make a vote on this, I need a little bit more specific information. I need a plan in front of me that shows exactly where you're going and a calculation of exactly the number of square feet of the new construction. I would also like if you can come up with an approximate square feet of
The whole.
the granite, not the grass in between, just the granite that you're taking out.
Well-
Because in my mind, that's the only hardscape you're taking out, are the pieces of granite.
Well, the grass kind of grew over the,
Yeah, I looked at it today.
Oh,
It's
okay.
actually very beautiful granite, particularly the large slab. But I think we need more specific numbers
Well,
here.
can I mention part of the reason he's removing that because of his wife? I think she rolled her ankle like twice already on those. Going around back, that she kind of wanted like a flat, nice surface with no.
Well, yeah, I can understand that. Now, my son-in-law does hardscape too, and I may be repeating what Mark does, because I'm not sure I understand it totally, but his feeling is that sometimes depending on the stone dust you put in between the stones,
There's not going to be any stone dust in between that.
there's no stone dust in between these pavers.
No. Well, when I
What's gonna
install
be in between?
little trap rocks, small, tiny rocks, so the water can actually seep through.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so that would not solidify over
Correct.
a couple of years, okay? That answers one question. But I'm basically back to, I think I need a more specific plan to make a decision.
So I think after everyone talks, we'll make a list of more things we wanna see, and then I can email you that list just so it's clear, and then hopefully you can get that to us in the next couple meetings or so.
Okay, thank you. Ernie?
Yeah, I'm struggling with the, couple of things. One, whether or not the existing hardscape that's there was ever approved, because we're using that as a baseline for the expansion. And if it wasn't, then I don't see how we can essentially give you credit for something that's not approved, that's existing hardscape. It would see the entire project as being new hardscape and subject to mitigation at 3 to 1. In addition to the walkway around the side, if that's going to be any sort of hardscape as well, then that would be subject to mitigation being within the 50 to 100. So that's number one. The second thing that I haven't heard mentioned but is of concern is all of the addition to this is new structure in the 50. And I assume, based on comments or the lack thereof, that we're all right with that, where I struggle. I mean, our position has always been no new structures in the 50.
I haven't spoken yet, Ernie.
Oh, good. All right. So those are my two largest concerns that I think have to be addressed before anything happens here. Because without the answers to those, then I don't see how we can even consider moving forward with plans, actually, because you don't know what your working space is.
Well, I don't personally have it with me, but I do have it right in the file.
You have what?
Like all the square footage, like on.
No, I understand, but
Yeah.
you don't know what's approved, what's not approved.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
So there's a lot of work from that perspective that needs to be done.
Just to follow up, Ernie, I think that, we can approve new structure in the 0 to 50 under variances, and that can be based on hardship or benefits to resources under the act or the bylaws. So, but we've been pretty consistent about new structures. So this might be a case of shifting present structures, something new. We don't have to authorize changes. I mean, they could just keep what they have, and that's the way it goes. But if there's a chance to really improve the resources, then I think that's how this might fly. And so I might support that if we can get some really good definition to what the existing hardscape is, find out some information that it might have been approved or not just put in 10 years ago. And then with the square footage, we can consider the 3 to 1. So that's kind of, but I think we also need a request for a variance. I think that's part of this. Because there is new structure proposed. And they would still have to come before us if they wanted to rebuild what was there. And we would approve it in kind as it was. But to have any alteration of what's there, that's a variance. And, I agree with you. I'm a little concerned about it. We've been pretty consistent, but I think, like Jim says, if this can really benefit resources by going 3 to 1 in a meaningful way, that might be approvable.
So our regulations, I've always wondered about this. So it says, yes, you would need a variance, but it doesn't mention anything about how you go about requesting a variance.
Mhm.
So what would you want for that?
Often we get in the notice of intent that request, and then it's often comes with an appeal as to why it should be approved, based on hardship or benefits to the resource area. In this case, it seems that we have, we don't have a lot of narrative going along with this. We don't have a lot of description of the project. So I think they should really document what the changes are in square footage. I think you've heard that some folks are saying that some of that area with the stone and the grass should be quantified to what is hardscape right now. And I think you're hearing that, we'd like to see, that defined and then go from there. So maybe they can provide a little narrative to saying just what they're going to do, define the square footage, and then once they define what's new, then I think if there's anything new, then it is a request for a variance, in my mind. It doesn't have to be that detailed of a narrative, but, we have been pretty steady about, increases in square footage from the 0 to 50.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one additional comment, which is about chemical and fertilizer use. It's very clear, having visited this site today, that it's not just fertilized, that there's herbicides in use, because there's absolutely nothing there except grass. There's no weeds, and that can only happen if there's herbicides being applied. So we have to be very specific about that, It's not just a case of fertilizer. And this is another hesitation I have about this paved hardscape is, and talking about what's going in the interstices of the, there are gonna be weeds there. I mean, anybody who's ever kept a paved patio knows that there's weeds in all, you know, weeds will come up. It may take a year or two, and particularly if you're not using, you know, the crushed stone dust, there's gonna be organic material accumulating there and weeds growing, and so the owner will have the choice of just ignoring the weeds, taking a weed whacker, or just spreading chemicals over the thing to get rid of them. And I suppose you pointed out that there is another option, which is using a weeding torch, but I'm a little skeptical about whether anybody's gonna follow that path very much. So I just think chemicals are a concern, and they're a concern specifically in this mode of construction. I don't know what the solution to that is, but it's just another reason to be hesitant about permitting this kind of hardscape in the 0 to 50.
I have a question, Nikki. For a variance or the notice of intent, do we require a professional survey?
You guys can.
I mean, we're talking work within the 50, and yet this is not a professional survey. It's not
No.
certified.
So he
we're
did
not even
contact-
sure that these things are in.
So he did contact Thad, I think it just was a time frame. No one could get out there and do a survey
Okay.
to make it to this meeting, which I think there might be on a time crunch in the owner's view.
So is that in the plans to have you produce to scale plans?
I have produced to scale plans.
Well, I guess,
Proposed, not existing.
Oh, proposed, so, but I have the existing drone imagery that's there. It's a photo mosaic. Every pixel is within 1/10 of a foot, so
Okay.
95% of the pixels within 1/10 of a foot. The other next 4% will be within 2/10.
so you can probably calculate from that your actual hardscape, and so that'd be your request for the project.
What are the thoughts on using vinegar for weed control?
It doesn't work.
It's taking care of the ones in my
I've got a bluestone patio.
Okay.
Maybe a combination
started
of
with
torch
that.
and vinegar?
We started with vinegar.
Okay.
There are mixes of vinegar, and I forget what else that people also propose.
Epsom salt.
Epsom salts, yes. Does that work? I don't know. I've never tried it myself.
I have been told it works, I haven't tried that one, but it makes a difference whether it's apple cider vinegar or white vinegar.
Or agricultural vinegar, which is higher concentration of
Well,
acetic acid. I
I
don't know.
tried it. I said, I can't remember,
Heard,
but I
cow
probably
urine
used the white
works pretty well.
vinegar.
What?
Cow urine.
Yeah, that's,
Cow urine, yeah.
Oh,
Cow urine, yeah. That's a little hard to catch, though.
Works with everything, kills everything.
yeah. And that, you get a freezer full after a year or two.
I'd rather have my weeds.
Well, before we send them off, can we give them a sense of whether, John's concerns, my concerns could be really difficult to allow this to be approved? Or are folks thinking that maybe we could find a way to have a 3-to-1 mitigation that makes this beneficial to resources? Is anybody really struggling with?
In my opinion, if, we can come up with a large increased buffer between the native plants on the bank, get rid of a large amount of lawn, have it all planted nicely with natives, and eliminate the fertilizer and chemical use on the property, that's a pretty significant positive impact, so.
How much lawn do you want to get rid of?
Well, I think they need to get the calculations for us, and
Right.
it'll be relative to that. We'd have to figure that out.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay,
So
so
that
the
is
specifics
not-
I
The
think are
lawn,
very
I
important.
think it is around 600 and something square feet that I will take out to plant those native
Okay.
plants like she's talking about.
Well, I'd say come back to us with those calculations.
Yeah.
And then we can go from there, and you've heard our concerns, but there's also a way to move forward. So I would say come back to it. Do you want to come back in 2 weeks, you need a little more time?
A little more time.
Okay. Do you want to,
And what's your you wanna continue for 2 weeks, and then we'll figure out, and then request a continuance from there, and see if we can get to the 4-week mark?
Sure. So does that mean we have to go to the next meeting, or?
You can go out the second meeting if you want, but that way you cover your bases. If you want to continue to December 4th, you can then continue again easily. But it's your choice. If you think you can't make the 4th, then we can just go to the next one, which I'm not sure what the date is.
It's the 18th.
Is that your preference to target that, or you want to put down the 4th just to?
Let's put down the 4th, just in
Okay.
case, and then
Okay.
we'll see how convincing it can be.
Can I ask you, if you are using this, you have requested a walkway that goes around the house? That's not, and that would be in the 50 to 100, which we're still protecting. So we would need that included in the
Good.
calculations for the hardscape in the, and in the diagram.
And can I add one? I'm pretty proud of this guy.
This is his first time in front of the commission,
Oh,
first
wow.
time doing a notice of intent. So,
I think so too.
Yeah, it's
Good
not,
start.
it's
Very
not,
nervous.
we're hard on everybody.
Yeah.
It's
There are
not,
so
Yeah, well-
few landscapers that come before the commission.
Yeah.
You're right.
And you see guys like me all the time, or the coastal guy, anybody else is in here, and there's always a disconnect. So
Yeah.
It's a good bridge, good experience.
very good technical responses to our questions. And that's because you're a practitioner on the ground. So, all right.
10 years.
Yeah. Any other thoughts before we continue?
More details on the plan, the more specifics about the project in general, the better.
Okay.
And then going back to whether this was originally approved or not.
I think that would be helpful. We may not get the answer, but I think it would be
I
helpful.
think it's gonna be hard to get the answer, and I also, I mean, yes, an owner is supposed to do their due diligence when they buy a property.
Yeah, but they
But
don't.
we all know they just assume that it's there, it's good, so
Mhm.
I do feel for the owner if it wasn't permitted because it wasn't his fault, but.
Right, but we've been able to uncover cases with Google Earth where people have told us it wasn't there.
And I'll go back and check some
and
more and
we-
see if
yeah.
I can
Sometimes we
work through
find out,
blurriness.
you know, in that case, so, okay.
And
But
if I may be-
wait. If there are no records in Conservation Commission's files of any approval of any of this hardscape, is there any reason to believe that it was ever approved?
Yes, because I think a lot of this, what was considered little stuff, just a patio, just some pavers, was added during construction, and then the agent back then would go out and be like, oh, that's all right, that's not a big deal. I think that
But
happened
this is
a
a
lot
pretty
back.
good sized retainer wall.
Yeah, I don't know,
But it was a simpler time.
Well,
yeah, I mean, it was
think it's
15
about-
years ago.
16 inches high?
Most of our files from back then don't have an as-built or what was signed off on for the certificate, so it's really hard to
Right.
tell if you don't
But
have Google Earth.
I can speak from 2009, moving forward, we've been pretty consistent with these type of things in terms of what we've allowed in the 0 to 50. So that's a 10-year window. So, you know, it might have snuck through 20 years ago, 15 years ago, but, you know, I think we've been on this topic for a little while. So, yeah, let's see what we can find out. And if we can't find out anything, then that's the way it goes, and we just try to produce the best project for the
I could be
resources.
bold enough, if we could prove that existed before the order of conditions was signed off, before the certificate of compliance, then we can assume that it was approved by the agent at the time.
Right, that's helpful. Yep, if you could.
That's the one that hopefully we can find that photo.
Okay, good. I will thank you. Well, then, I'll move that we continue the proposal for 27 Strangway until December 4th.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You did a good job.
Okay, so we
Yeah,
have,
you're gonna be involved still.
we approve one, no, we approve two. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send both of you an email that, you know, just goes over what was discussed. Write it right on here.
Good evening.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got some business to do. We've got, what, the zero sequatum order first?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so they provided the revised plan that you guys asked for. I'm not up to date on what exactly that was, since I wasn't at the meeting. And then Amy drafted the order.
Well, is there a revised plan in the Dropbox?
That's a good question.
There was a revised plan for 14 Sequatum, but that's something different. That's what we,
I think it was just, I mean, it was just something small that they were showing. I think just a small
That's the,
clarification that you guys had asked for.
adding-
I don't know.
Adding plantings and soil to the front of the retaining wall, is that?
Oh, yeah, it was, they were waiting for plantings. That's what it was. The landscaper took a while to give a planting list, so I think that's what they added.
This is the little retaining wall on this, on Long Pond, that's what we're talking about?
Yeah, which one though?
The one with, they're doing out of stone, and,
wait a minute. This got approved last meeting, is that right?
yes.
Yeah, so it's just approving the order now. But there was something small that they needed to change on the plan. I'm just
Yeah,
not
there
sure
was,
what
but I
that
don't remember what it was.
I had asked, or we had talked about moving the retaining wall landward a little bit and adding soil and plantings in front of it, in between it and the pond. I would be curious to take a look at
Sure.
what they came up with, but.
Oh, yeah.
The retaining wall is to the west of the deck. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Right, and there was a fallen tree
Yep.
to the left of the staircase where the shed was, that was on the
Yeah.
banks of the pond.
Right. All right.
Back to you if you want.
Oh, okay.
Keep coming up expired. No, you don't need to do that section, you just need to get those. You're not doing anything, so it's fine, it's expired.
Any further comments on this one?
See that when you're done?
Yeah, you can see. They moved that wall inland and added that planting area.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we talked about.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's very different, actually,
Yep.
because there were pilings here. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right.
What, or there's a few plants, specified for that planting area. It's on a different page.
Looks like they're doing 40 plants. 5 sweet pepper bush, 10 sweet fern, 10 black-eyed Susan, 10 milkweed, 4 inkberry.
For that area, for the whole project.
For the whole project,
The whole
3
project.
different areas.
So they added 5 sweet pepper bushes from last time that was proposed to us.
It seems a
They're now
little
doing
light.
10.
Yeah. All right, I actually don't have the conditions
What does?
accessible to
Sweet
me.
pepper bush?
Just the quantity and,
They're pretty normal.
The,
40 plants? Or is it?
yeah, but they're not gonna be very
outside
big, and they're not necessarily woody plants.
Perennial
Clean,
stuff.
daily loose
Well,
debris,
sweet pepper
no
bush get
fertilizer, herbicide,
pretty big, don't
pesticide,
they? Cleffer,
remain
isn't that
under
Cleffer?
fringe perpetuity,
I don't know, I don't think they get that big.
underground permanent irrigation to remain.
I've got a ton of that stuff.
Temporary allowed, then shall be removed. Plantings installed during the same or next growing season as the wall.
yeah.
Native grass mix to stabilize any disturbed soils prior to planting. Wood piles that were used to encompass an old garden area on the slope are to be removed and disposed of. Down tree at the base of the slope to remain. And an as-built at the end of the project.
Yeah, the one thing, I'm thinking there's gonna be a tendency for that area between the retaining wall and the beach to become beach. It would be very easy for that to happen. I wonder if there should be a specific condition, a one line that says, which planting area is that?
Not different. Number 1, I guess it would be. Seems to me, Jim, there ought to be a bigger, woodier plant closer to the shore to discourage that.
Right, yeah, it's.
Isn't Cleffer good for that though, sweet pepper
It
bush?
is good, and it would spread eventually if managed properly. But I think there's just, so, you know, you got this rock retaining wall, you got this existing beach, and the idea is that this was gonna become natural pond bank in planting area 1. I just don't see enough specification on the plan or a condition to really make sure that happens.
So let's hold it back for a meeting and.
Unless we can just come up with it, can we just come up with it right now, or does it have to be
That would be better because we
published,
did approve the project already, so I don't know if we can, but they did submit a revised plan after.
Right.
So I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wording that said,
Could we make an amendment to the plant list that they're using and require something heavier down?
That one you already approved, that was on the November 4th meeting. So that would start to require them to, you have to discuss it with them.
It'd have to be an omission from what was in the approval. You know, if we went back to the records and found that that was supposed to be in there, then that's fine, but we couldn't add it now if it wasn't approved, right?
Right.
And I can't recall. We discussed that point.
additional plants.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the point is to make sure that that area becomes natural, like the sweet pepper bush are allowed to grow. There'll probably be other species that come up naturally there.
I think we
So,
can add a condition that
if we-
that area is to remain naturalized and not
Yeah.
turn into beach.
If we added a sentence that said the entirety of the planting area number 1 is to be allowed to naturalize and shall not become beach, something along those lines.
Oh, boy. The fact they put planting area, does that mean they intend to plant something there?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
they have 3
Yeah.
planting areas.
Yeah.
And that's what we voted on, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the planting plan they gave us has a stamp of October 28th, so that means you heard it at the last meeting.
That didn't cover that area, though. That was a,
Planting area 1 is
5.
5 sweet pepper bush.
but the planting area was changed at that meeting. That's what this revision is. So the area is much larger now. That's the concern. I think
And I
might be.
think we could do add the condition and then just ask them for an updated planting plan, if that works for you guys.
Yeah, it certainly should have been amended after that because the area was made roughly twice the size, so there should certainly be more plants put in there.
Did they add more plants, Nikki?
They've
got 10 sweet pepper bush now in area one?
All I have is this, the older one. from-
No, that's the only one I have. So where is their revised planting list?
I haven't, that's why I'm bringing it up. I don't think it
Gave us
exists.
the revised plan to show.
Well, then let's hold it back and just, get what we need before we approve it.
I've just been concerned the whole time that this is gonna become beach and, a revetment essentially, which is, from that concern, they brought it back, this 3 feet or 4 feet, I think it's 3 feet.
Mhm.
So that's the revision, this planting area doubled in size. But it's important to plant it, otherwise it's gonna just get trampled, become beach, and
Mhm.
the condition would be even worse than what the original.
Then let's ask for a specific planting plan. And if there's any question marks, you can check the minutes, the records. Okay.
So you don't want to sign off on this thing?
Seem like we should. We should ask for clarification on the planting plan, and then maybe you could check you or Amy could just check the minutes to see if we, sometimes we forget what we said, and we shouldn't ask for more than we approved at the hearing. Okay, so next we have a couple certs.
53 North Road, Amy wants to wait, she hasn't gotten out there to measure and see really what was not, obviously that weird section is not in compliance, but she's not sure if it extended further or not yet, so she wanted to wait till December. 17 Kildee was a septic system with a retaining wall. I think the system had to be raised, and then they changed the driveway. The driveway's pervious, everything's replanted, it's in compliance.
Okay. Well, I move that we accept the certificate of compliance for 17 Kildee Road.
Second.
Second by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's approved. And next we have 2 sets of minutes.
Well, first we have the minor change in plan for 9 Fiddler's Landing.
Okay, I guess.
He just wants to add some big, loose, dry laid, exact words. Minor change of plan, would like to propose adding slate stepping stones from the patio to the dock. The slate stones would be placed on the grass, and there'd be plenty of space in between them for grass to grow.
In essence, what they were taking out on Strand Way, the one that was over there, it's the
Yeah,
same,
just
same
the-
configuration,
Small tap.
stepping stones.
And therefore, do we consider it hardscape structure in the 50?
It's in the 0 to 50?
Yeah,
Is it? There.
it is,
I don't
it's
know.
going to the dock.
I didn't see it.
And I think almost all the back of that house is in the 0 to 50.
Perhaps it's better to do that than it is to have
Approximately
a
the
worn-down
25
path.
foot to where the dock starts. So, about
In
20-foot
a-
strip of pervious stepping stones.
In a lawn area? Is
Yeah,
that
I
in a
believe
lawn
so.
area?
Yes.
I guess technically there should be a small amount of mitigation for that.
So this occurred, they came to us and said, we want to make this change.
Yeah, they just wanted to have stepping
Yeah.
stones.
Do you have a
Yep.
square footage?
I
number?
don't, but I can get it.
Yeah, I think knowing that they're this big or this big is pretty important.
Okay.
I'm familiar with that project, and, we went back and forth a lot on what was done in the 0 to 50.
Mhm.
So I think it's,
All right, I'll get a number and
Yeah.
have them draw an informal thing
Yeah.
of where they're going,
Yeah.
how many,
I think that's
and
reasonable.
then I can tell them to add a few plantings.
Yeah, that's probably the way it should go, to be consistent, unless anyone feels otherwise. You know, we do allow a 4-foot path to access the waterways, and so, you know, that could probably fit into that language, I suppose.
What's the length on it, did they say?
It looks, they didn't say exactly, but from the plan, it looks like maybe about 25 feet in length.
As I recall, it must be 20-odd feet.
Yeah, because the end of the porch is a little over 25 feet away from the resource area, and then down to the pergola thing.
I would speculate it's probably 14 or 15 steps. It seems to me like it's much to do over very little.
And we could tell them we don't want, we'll approve it contingent on there being reasonable 2x2 or something like that.
Yeah.
And in fact, they came to us, and this is a nit to me, really, it would seem. But they did disclose it, so that's...
Yeah, that's good. That's positive.
I'll get more information, and he'll send me an email by the next meeting, and you guys can vote on it then.
Or do we just want to approve it with the
You could
condition
approve
on
it now, and
size?
I can update you on what he tells me.
I'd like to know what it is, you know, just to make
Well-
sure it's not something that's, you know, larger, but
If you had a 18 by 12 stepping stone, would that be a normal stepping stone?
It would, in the context of a pathway to access the water, I think it'd be fine.
And what would we want in between these stepping stones?
It's just
2
gonna be-
inches or a foot?
They're just gonna lay them on the grass, I think.
Yeah.
No, but what do they want, how far space?
I got the idea it was gonna be a good, you know, the whole length of your step kind of area,
So, 2 feet,
yeah.
foot and a half type of thing, as opposed to a 2
Yeah, it's not
inch,
gonna be like a quarter inch or anything, no.
2 inch barrier between the stepping stones.
I think it's gonna look, you know, somewhat like 27 Strandway, but just a straight line of
Right.
one row. But I'll,
Yep, it sounds trivial. You know, we've had commissions in the past that just have a strict literal interpretation to a no disturb zone. So nothing, you know, if you want to bring it back towards a natural state, that's acceptable. Everything else is not acceptable. And we have variances that would allow you to do that, but I think it's reasonable to ask them to describe what they want to do. Okay. On to minutes.
we have April 17th and October 16th, June was not done.
April 17th, hung around for a while. I had no comments on April 17th. I had one question, though, and this is probably just something to look up if you can. The fine we issued at 7 Great Woods Road, we never heard if that was actually paid. That was really an egregious set of violations, and we put together $1,200 in fines, which was a large fine. And I'm just curious if they did pay.
We get an update like once a month from the clerk on whether they paid or not, so I'll look at the last one she gave us and see where that stands.
Was there other action on that too? I can't.
There was a fair amount of mitigation activity. They were taking out a lot of invasive plants, and we pushed back that that was considered truly mitigation, and so they made some adjustments. They were building a little bit of a, you know, they had a stone wall on the beach.
Oh, that was the long pond, yeah.
Cobble.
I
Then the
remember
rock,
that.
then
So,
the walkway.
they
down,
filed
I
a
think.
new notice of intent, and Wilkinson was doing the
Right,
work.
and they had to
yeah.
pull out the wood plankway that was going into the
Yeah.
water. That had to be removed.
Yeah,
So.
it'll be interesting to
The
see how
walkway
that comes
down
out.
with all the timbers.
Yeah,
and
I don't
brickwork
see need
and
to
the
change
deck
the
and-
minutes, but it just maybe, you know, it'd be good to get some feedback on this one, because it was kind of a big deal what was done. A lot of work occurred without a permit.
Right.
Yeah, I can check on that tomorrow.
Thank you.
I have a very small typographical error. Page 3, 6 line down. If the commission decides they want it to go back to being pervious, I think that word should be A-N, not A-N-D. It is minutia.
No, we count on you for that, Carolyn.
Yeah, I'm really good at maneuvers.
Yeah, we need that.
Yes, I will fix that.
Any other comments for April 17th?
No.
Nope.
No, I'll go ahead and motion that we approve the minutes for April 17th, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. On to the 16th.
The 16th, on the first page, the commission, we use the words, the capital CES. I think someplace that should be spelled out.
Okay. I can do that for the first one.
Mhm.
So on the second page, another minute typo, the word resource is spelled incorrectly, 5th line down in the first item.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't get that far.
Oh, yeah.
Was the RDA filed for Daisy Lane?
That's coming up as an update. Yes, it has been filed. The original woman, Lori, that you talked to, we don't know what was going on with that, but she's no longer the one that's taking it over. The other woman who was in the audience has taken it over. Lori just wasn't cooperating and wasn't getting it done, and she was like, I'm just gonna do it in the spring, and we said no. So Dawn took it over. She filed it last week, so I think it won't make it to the December 18th, but it wasn't really her fault, so we're fine with that. And the bank was stabilized, so that was installed.
Good.
So we're on a good start with it.
There is no point to see, they just kind of.
Oh. I get sick of reading these ones. Sometimes I know that.
I set that minutes for a technical meeting the other day, and somebody responded, I think, yeah, because that's misspelled.
Like I listened to the video, and then I redo them, and then just, I don't wanna read them anymore.
Exactly.
I can't handle reading this case when we're done.
You
I
look
don't
at the
blame you.
notes, I know, and sometimes it doesn't get that.
I got one addition to the discussion item, water management in the Bells Neck Bogs.
Okay.
If you could just add a sentence that says the commission discussed forming a subcommittee to work on bog management. That's all I have for that. Any other comments for October 16th?
Nope.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
I would move to approve the minutes for,
Seconded by John. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Okay.
I'm not in a hurry.
Try to speak a
You
little
gotta
quicker
speak, I
next
was
time.
gonna say, Mark, you gotta talk quicker.
I think we should revise our docket fee regulations at some point. I don't know if you guys wanna bother getting into it tonight. From what I researched with other towns, almost no one allows dredging to get their 3 feet. So I don't think,
Or construction in shellfish areas.
they're kind of vague like us on that. There was one town that has called out what significant versus non-significant is.
Was it Barnstable?
maybe Falmouth, one of the
Yeah.
bigger
Yeah.
towns.
They said 9 square feet, 1 quahog is significant.
Yeah,
In a square foot?
Yep, 1 oyster is significant, nine square feet.
Oh, wow, that's
Yeah.
really not dense at all.
but, I
I
mean,
would say not.
Yeah, that's not
there's no
dense.
real documentation on how they got to that.
Right.
So, I mean, it would obviously be, commercial value equals 3 or more adult shellfish yeah, it was Falmouth, per square foot. Recreational value is 1 or more shellfish per square foot.
Right.
That was,
That's
there's another
valid.
one that's got even more specific, I think.
Well, the two things I think we'd like to work on is that, to get more definition to how we look at significant shellfish habitat, and then whether we want to change our setback rules. And we discussed that as well by having a longer distance that's required. So I do think that we should maybe draft up some ideas, circulate them, and then come into a meeting and give it like an hour. I don't think we're gonna knock things out tonight, unless people feel otherwise. It's a pretty big deal. We've been talking about it for a long time, and I think it's probably time. At one point, we were given assignments to look at different towns, what they had, and everybody went away with 3 towns to look at. This was probably 8 years ago or so. And I think we should kind of summarize and document what the other towns have, and then pick what works for us.
Yeah.
So I just have a question about the no dredging. I mean, is this typically with no qualifications? It's just, if you want to dock, you can't, under any circumstances.
You can't dredge to get your depth. You have to find it naturally, whether it's going out further or something along those lines, but they don't allow any dredging. Most of the towns. It either doesn't say or it says no dredging is allowed to get to your 3-foot depth.
In a shellfish area?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
I think the reasoning is you're impacting land under the water, which is a resource that we're supposed to protect. And so I think that's part of the reason. I could see places in Wichita Harbor where it's okay to dredge. It's just so, swilly as it is, just soft sediments. But if it's a natural habitat, I don't think it's really appropriate to dredge to gain that 3 feet.
And it's kind of equivalent to saying you need to be out of the 50-foot buffer. Okay, I'm just gonna fill and make this buffer not exist anymore.
It's really kind of bending the rules, I think. And so, for the one we recently denied in Wichita Harbor, that's functional habitat. And so you would alter that habitat to allow something that was also going to alter shellfish and salt marsh. So that was a real stretch in my mind. But we should consider that. If you've got really degraded substrate, it's probably not a big deal to dredge.
But then you're always having an argument about whether the substrate is really degraded or not. Because, I mean, maybe sometimes it's unambiguous, but it strikes me that a lot of times, the advocates are arguing one thing, and the opinion on this side is something else, and there doesn't seem to be any way of resolving that. In the end, you just have to be arbitrary in making your choice one way or the other. And if there's a firm rule that
I think you could say, anoxic sediments of a certain grain size, which a consultant could document. That's a little more, to me, black and white than shellfish densities. If those sediments are anoxic, like they probably are on the north side of Witchmere, not a big deal. But
Start signing that one.
I think we should, put our ideas together and come in and really pick a session in the next month or so where we just put things on the table. And I would like to see a longer distance setback between docks.
I'm interested in that for freshwater as well. I don't know if anyone else has thought about that. So for freshwater, 65 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The difference is you don't have the scouring impacts nearly as much with the freshwater. So I don't see the impacts as severe. But we could talk about it. We could look at what other towns have and.
To me, that's going to be a lot more impact. The salt water, a lot of it's been done. There's a little bit of Herring River that could have less docks on it if we increase that size. And, yeah, to me, Pleasant Bay is 200 feet, and Herring River isn't really that much less valuable than Pleasant Bay, so it should be.
I would say the scouring impacts on
something
Herring River are stronger than.
roughly the same.
I-
Well, I don't think those are, to me, that's not the only impacts of allowing a dock.
It's not.
Um,
Someday we should put on boots and get out to the Herring River and look at the scouring impacts from these docks. That's what I'd like to do, is try to, show you folks what I've seen over the years. I think, when you've got flowing water, you can really disrupt the salt marsh in a pretty wide footprint away from the islands. And you won't see that as much in Witchmere Harbor or Pleasant Bay or the pond.
Scouring effects on the salt marsh, sure.
Yeah, so that, and then if you scour out salt marsh, you're scouring out shellfish habitat too, so. That's something I think has really been impactful.
So, my question about specifically freshwater regulations, my issue is we don't even enforce the ones we already have. And, I mean, I know because I live on a pond, and people build docks, and nothing happens. And I'm on a small pond. I don't know what happens on Long Pond. I suspect that it's more of a problem than some people are willing to acknowledge. And part of the issue, in my view, is conservation doesn't have the resources. So I don't know what to do about that, but if we're going to tighten up the rules, the first thing I would want to consider is how do we enforce the rules we already have? And if we're tightening the rules, shouldn't we keep in mind that they're hard to enforce and try to structure them in a way that makes them easier to enforce and easier for people to accept it?
It seems like a lot of, I know there's been a lot of informal things done in the past for freshwater, for sure. But it seems like
Four people signed it.
when people are building a brand new dock last year, I don't know if any of that happened.
It did.
Well, without ending up here.
It did.
But that's an area that
Did it end up here?
We find
It
it.
did
yeah.
not end up here.
Oh,
So you had a brand new dock going into your pond, and
Yeah, and part of, I pointed it out. And, I mean, nothing short of me, going to the person and telling them they're in violation, which I have not done myself, because, I don't know if that's really the right thing to do in the first place, plus it puts me in direct conflict with my neighbors, which
Right,
I'm not
yeah.
really that enthusiastic about doing.
Well-
And a part of the issue, particularly, I mean, in a lot of places, I'm sure, in Harwich, on freshwater ponds, a lot of the real property is not occupied full-time. There are people who spend most of their time somewhere else. They have no clue what the rules are. And there may or may not be some disdain for the rules mixed in there as well, but I think we should be talking about how we get in front of that whole issue. And, we get certain enforcement things in front of us and we go after them, but other people ignore the rules and never have to deal with the consequences.
Well, in your case, you're familiar with that pond. I've gone paddling down the river and see something, and sometimes I've questioned Amy, trying to explain to her because I'm not familiar with the river. I mean, those buildings. I mean, I see something and I'm questioning, is that something that's changed or isn't it? Like there was one dock where it all of a sudden, and I don't know if she ever went after, it looks like all of a sudden the dock got expanded with almost like a platform with benches that went out the sides of the dock, and it looked like new construction, but I couldn't prove that.
I think all you can do is make the request to Amy and Nick and say, can you guys take a look?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we rely on.
But I'm looking-
Property transfers help, because I've started, we had a couple this summer that the guy wanted a dock, a house with a dock. And so he would come in and do research, and I'd be like, that's not permitted. So like the 115 Sequoia one, I sent them a letter, said your dock's not permitted,
Yep.
get it permitted. So that, neighbors complaining, are really the only way, and stuff we see, just happen to see,
But-
are really the only ways we can
But
find
what-
these.
But the problem I have sometimes, I'm not even sure what the address is that
Yeah,
I'm
we
looking
have
at
to
from
know
the
the
water.
address.
So sometimes I've been able to find some, or, you know, the floats on in the spring. I've seen those, and some I've been able to identify, and Amy did something about it, and others I wasn't sure what their addresses were.
Yeah, that's a 10-year issue that isn't fully resolved, and it's difficult because there's an incentive to continue to put them on the marsh. I think if we do revise our regs, we get stricter with that provision, because that's just a flat-out impact. The footprint of the dock kills the salt marsh, and the next year it moves over to a different place and it kills that footprint, and it just keeps going on. So it's tough. Amy has tried, and I think the contractors are resistant to, it's hard for them to do anything but drag it up on the salt marsh. If they were to bring it upland, it's a more difficult process using different machinery. The barges won't get it up in the upland, so I think we just adjust our regulations to just say, you can't do that, it's too impactful.
The other thing I've seen a couple of times on the river, and, you know, especially during low tide, I'm pretty sure in a couple of cases where, you know, and I'm talking older docks that are there, the float gets down on the riverbed.
Yep.
Because the river's changed from when the dock was built.
Maybe, but the regs are still the permit's still the permit. It has 2.5 feet. It's got to be above bottom at low water, so they would have to make adjustments, I think.
If it was a newer one, if it was a really old one,
They
they
would-
probably didn't have that.
Right.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that people who own boats pay to have their boats hauled out of the water and stored, or they have trailers and their own equipment to haul their boats out of the water and store them, and I don't see why, I mean, it's an additional expense, and people are accustomed to just pulling their docks up onto the shore and, you know, having, you know, family maybe do a little of the work, but I'm not sure why we should just assume that that's the only way to deal with it. That we ought to be also thinking in terms of people spending whatever money they have to spend to maintain their dock and to comply with the town regulations, which could in more than a few cases require them to bring a barge and pull the dock up onto the barge and bring it somewhere to be stored, rather than, you know, trying to make a bad choice between leaving it in the marsh or maybe there is no other choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of the most obvious cases of environmental degradation that's right in front of our eyes. It shouldn't happen. It's avoidable. So yeah, let's tighten that up.
I know, I think Amy sent a lot of letters last year, or something.
I think she did, 1 or 2 years ago, and I think the
This year
resistance, I believe, is with the contractors. They
send a bunch of fines this year, maybe, if it's a repeat.
Yeah, I think tighten up our regs and then maybe send some fines.
Is there an issue with the regs, or?
I think that there's some question mark for older docks. You know, the case could be made that it wasn't specifically in the order of conditions, but I think our regs even forget about that. I think our regs don't allow you to impact
Destroy
salt marsh.
Yeah. To
So-
me, I think the regs are kind of all right. Just got to change the
Right.
culture, and which has got to just take strong enforcement, essentially. I mean, I would
Yeah.
think. I know a lot in the the mill pond where I work every day. Every single one is brought to the ramp and hauled out and stored elsewhere.
Okay.
I've never seen
I
one
think we
of
might be making a little inroad on this too, because I was at the Lanyard Restaurant the other night, and you know that business that's just west of the Lanyard, it's some sort of a car place, but they
Right.
advertise storage. In their backyard now, they've got several docks piled on top of each other in the backyard. Unfortunately, it's not very far from some other kind of a wetland that would be protected, but it's,
Better than sitting on salt marsh.
I was gonna say, putting value on wetlands, it's not salt marsh.
Well, if it's in a
It's-
gravel
it's-
parking lot or something, then
It's
that's.
Phragmites.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's what I recommend, is we don't let it go too long, you know. Just try to pick a semi-quiet meeting in, you know, this winter and just tackle it, put things on paper, and I don't know if any of these things need town vote, or if, you know,
Regulations, I think, just need a public hearing,
a public hearing,
because we're not changing the bylaw or fees.
right? The bylaw would require a vote. Okay, so regulations, so we, all right, so we modify the regulations and make a proposal.
If you think you've already gotten enough of a comprehensive survey of the other towns, great, but if you think we need more information on exactly what each of the other towns do, you could assign each of us one or two towns to research.
Yeah, that would, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Just tell Amy to
We
assign
did,
it to us.
we did that a little while ago, and I think what came up is that for shellfish, the information really isn't there. And so I think for these other tasks, we can probably see what other towns are doing and come up with what we want to do.
Yeah.
For shellfish, we're gonna have to make decisions, I think, on densities. And I just like looking at the language, and I don't find it that ambiguous, you know, to me. You know, it says what it says, but let's strengthen that and try to protect really valuable shellfish habitat, so it's not a question mark. So that's what I recommend. How do you get there? I talked to shellfish biologists, and they're not even willing to put a number down. They feel like it's not that clear. It depends on the species. So
If you read Bourne's regulations, the sort of preamble to the specifics is, it talks about the impacts as opposed to standards, which I thought was very well done. I mean, it almost sounds like you shouldn't have a dock anywhere, anytime, sort of a thing.
yeah.
And, I mean, they even go so far as to ask what kind of a boat's gonna be there, what's its draft, what kind of propulsion, you know, all that kind of stuff, too.
I think a
Which was
practical,
interesting.
yeah, I think a practical way to address this is considering increasing our water depth to float, maybe to 3 feet, and increasing our setback. And then that minimizes the locations where you could have a dock, and it would minimize impacts that way. And so that's something, I can't say if everyone agrees with that, or if even, you know, the public would want to see that. But that's one way I'd tackle it, and then try to strengthen the shellfish density somehow. We've had, you know, we approved the Maha dock next to the shellfish growing area in Witchmere Harbor. Really high densities of soft shell clams. That one, that got by us.
It would be interesting, though, to see a survey now, which is how many years? Is this 6 years from the Mahar dock?
Yeah.
7 years, 8? What the density is today.
Here's what's happening. You can't exclude the impacts of harvesting. And what I'm seeing is the demographics are changing in this town, and we're having more retirees get involved in shellfishing, and that spot is being harvested more than, you know, in recent years. So it's kind of interesting. How do you exclude that? To me, there's less soft shell clams there. And then is it environmental? You know, is it climate change? You know, we know that soft shell clams are taking a hit from ocean acidification.
Oh, really? Here? I mean, is the pH
pH is
locally,
dropping.
is it a
dropping.
measurable difference?
Yes.
Here in Nantucket Sound?
I don't know about Nantucket Sound, but in the Gulf of Maine, yes. The studies that have been, you know, long enough duration to say if there's a difference, are showing a decline in ocean pH. And that's hitting some of these softer shell clams, the ones that don't, you know, put down as much shell.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what is the, like, nominal pH of, like, ocean water here?
I think historically it was probably like 7.7 to 8.3. 7 is neutral.
Yeah, right.
And so it's acidic if it's below 7, and it's creeping down below there in like a 30-year window. And so You know, Maine's really concerned about losing soft shell clams. There haven't been studies here to really document that, but, so is it docks, is it harvesting, you know? I think it'd be good to look at that, but I think it'd be tough to separate that from other influences.
Is there speculation to the cause of that?
Of the ocean acidification, it's carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is interacting more with, it's integrating into the ocean. So the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide. When that disassociates in the ocean, it becomes acidic. So I'm not a chemist, but it's carbonic acid is broken down from carbon dioxide, in that the H ions in that cause the water become more acidic.
Okay.
So it's atmospheric CO2. Are we still on video?
Yes.
I better get my chemistry right. Carbonic acid.
We just need to vote on the schedule for next year. It's all the first and third Wednesdays of the month, except for January is the second and the fourth Wednesday. It's a 5 Wednesday week, so you'll still have a break in between 2 meetings, but I think it's January 1st is a Wednesday, so we had to go back to the next week.
Okay.
So what about July?
I don't know what I was looking at, but when I specifically was even talking to Amy, and I was like, oh, we don't want to do that Wednesday. Something I saw, or in my head saw, was July 3rd was a Wednesday, and Amy and I are obviously off on Friday the 4th, so we didn't want to do a meeting on that night.
So
But
it is
but I think
Wednesday that week.
It is Wednesday.
Okay.
I don't know what I was looking at, an old calendar, the wrong month, something.
Okay.
Everyone go with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do we need to vote?
I guess we have to have a motion.
I would, just to be on the safe side.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting dates for 2020.
Second that by Mark, and all in favor say aye. Aye.
Maybe, can I just make one quick comment, in case you hear that this is going on? The Garden Club has had a big drive to get individual yards, gardens, beaches, etc., certified by the National Wildlife Federation as a certified wildlife habitat site. And whoever's yard it is, I did it for Myrtle Beach, which is one of our properties, and you had to check off that there was a nesting site, that there was no fertilizers used, that there was a water source, that there was underground growth so that small varmints have space, that there were berries for birds to eat, along that lines. And so I think the town now has 175 properties certified as a natural wildlife habitat.
Do you get a tax abatement?
No.
No.
Wasn't there?
You get a nice little sign though. Now you get a certificate, which I was gonna give to the conservation department since,
That's for Merkel?
that's for Merkel.
We did a bunch of our other properties.
Yeah.
Nice.
Any which way, we are the first town on Cape Cod to get certified, and probably the only, maybe the third town in Massachusetts.
All right, very
So
good.
if you hear what's going,
Those things came out about a year ago. Were
We've been working
distributed.
on it.
Weren't they, wasn't there a fee to do that?
it was $20 to register it,
Well done.
but, so. I don't know, I think it just makes people aware of what you've got in your yard and what you don't. But it was very easy to qualify. A wood pile
Yeah,
gave,
I've got all that stuff.
yeah. Yeah. You want an application?
I have them in the office.
All right. I move that we adjourn.
I
No, I
second.
was just cleaning up.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.